to you all that we are for the first time live recording this event, so please be aware. I would like to advise everyone present that should the fire alarm sound, you should leave the building immediately via one of the fire exits which are clearly signposted outside this committee room. Please only use the stairs, do not use the lift. The fire assembly point is in the staff car park at the rear of the Dean House. You should not return to the building for any reason until you have been advised it's safe to do so. For members of the public wishing to use the toilets, these can be found off the landing immediately outside the committee room. So it's just straight through that door. It's not there. Can I remind anyone to please put your mobile phone on silent mode and keep the phone away from the microphones to minimize interference. I also request that anyone who has brought a cup or glass into the committee room, please can you return it to the kitchen area after the meeting has finished. Thank you very much. Right, so no. Would you like me to start this again?
Just know what you said.
Would anyone like to repeat? Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for attending. And before we begin, we deem it appropriate to start every council meeting with a moment of reflection. And I'd like to invite Tom Dubois, who's the parish priest for the Taunton and Wellington Catholic Parish, to give us a few minutes of his time. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel very privileged to be here with you. And I was very touched that you decided to choose Harris as your municipality for this year. And before he's here tonight, as you continue to look at the council at how you can support refugees in our town. It's a topic that's very close to my heart. My grandmother arrived in this country in 1939 with 2 suitcases. She found that all of her family were killed in the camps at Auschwitz and Regensburg. And when she came, as you can imagine, she was very alone. By some people, she was feared as possibly a spy, almost interred as an enemy alien. There were 1 or 2 who really welcomed her and saw her in her human dignity, who really helped her to feel valued, coming from a country where she was considered something less than human. And that's something that stayed with her throughout her life. When she got into her later 80s, she was no longer able to do the regular slot she'd been doing, helping to volunteer at a shelter like homeless to prepare food for them. So she used to go to town and buy cakes for the shelter. And she said to me, I always make sure I buy the best cakes, because so often the homeless get the leftovers, the things that no one wants. And I want them to feel really valued, to feel that they have dignity and worth and are loved. That value was very much at the heart of what she did. And my prayer for you tonight is that it be also at the heart of what you do. That you may always see that value of the human person, of the lost, of the least, of being at the very heart of your work as a council. Thank you so much for all that you are and that you do for our town.
Thank you very much, Tom, for those thoughtful words. And I think we can all echo that as councillors, we always have the best interests of our community, which is why we are here in the position we are. It's time now to take some public questions, and I have 2 on my list to begin with. So could I first invite Mr. Ray Rose up to speak?
Yeah, very cool. Fourthly, they're trying to get they're trying to get Torn Town to fill the toilets, I've been told. Of portrait, because we're in a mess, they stink, everything. There's setbacks put in the toilets, has been green. Three I've seen, I won't go into detail. The toilets stink, the urinals haven't been cleaned, they don't fly. And if all the bits have been took bits and they're not used, don't work. And I was told by a councillor, I sent you all emails, I think you'll find, of different things. I've been checking since April, and they're a right mess. Where you wash your hands, that's all gone up. The toilet pans have gone up, the urinals just gone up. It's a right mess, and everybody keeps passing the buck. And it's about time, there's two cafes in town, there's one in Viking Park, and the ladies up there got to spray stuff on the floor in the cafe. There's a stink coming through. Flies, there's everything. And the ones in French Clear, they can't be in there, she said the same, and they're brand new toilets. They're not cleaned. No one visited them. The cleaners, hurdy-burdy, waste of time, waste of council taxpayers' money. They spent £50,000 putting a fence up in the wrong place. That's when it was torn down. That's thank you, which I got a meeting with them next month. But they spent 50,000 on that. It should have been in the cricket ground. I sent people emails. I sent the town leader, who wrote reached to, Torn Town Council. No one answers. No one answers. I've been to his head, and he don't answer. No one answers. I went to toilet just now, looking all around here, checking them before I got here. Exactly the same. One flush is on its own. If you stay there long enough, you'll flush the toilet pan. And I told them about it. I've made, there's loads of it. I've read it all down in here anywhere. They've got a copy of it. So it is a mess. Ivy Birdie's got to go. Simple as that. You've got a lady downstairs cleaning up. You go to the toilet, she's not even cleaning. They stink. The public's got to use them. And I'm one of the public. I used to work for Torpen Day. I expect it's on my note. And I used to pick all the needles up and sling it, but they're left there. There's nothing on the pans, just left there. I'll pick up one Sunday in Victoria Park, Victoria Park, then Victoria Park, and put it in the needle box. And up Byford Park, you've got two baby changing tables in there. Would you change your baby on one of the tables? No. And so say someone did change their baby's nappy up there. Where would they put the nappy? There's nowhere to put it. They'd be in a toilet pan, flushed away and blocked. But none of them would use it. Drug users use it. Byford Park is where they do the drug dealings. Ask the lady in the cafe. Poultry, toilets, drugs. Ann Street is drugs and whatever wants to talk to go in there. And Castle Green is that yeah. So that's my said. But something's got to be done. How do you really got to go? If they can spend £50,000 on a fence, it's in the wrong place. They can get rid of ID, pay them off, get proper cleaners in. You've got a nice cleaner down there, pay her. Sorry.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Can you turn off your mic? Thank you very much for your contribution there. So the next person that I have on my list, I'd like to invite Mr. Alan Debenham. And I feel that I need to remind you that we do try and restrict this to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Somebody said they would provide a script of the question.
No, I don't think we do have. But
The topic will be available for me to read. I don't roughly remember, especially with the songs. That was so much.
I'd like to be like that with all my, we could be able to read that.
And read, well, stop and read it once. The right here.
Yeah, there's going to say good evening to everyone. My name's Alan Devlin. Some people have. Anyway, yeah, this is in response to something I sent to Marcus Krause. Thanks a lot, Marcus. And yes, I have some questions for tomorrow's TTC meeting on the poor state of the town centre, recently getting worse rather than better. I'm now carless and riding my bike everywhere daily, so these questions are of great importance. Number one, empty premises dereliction. To try to prevent the town centre getting any worse, why can't the town council, possibly with the help of Somerset Council DLO or an enlightened Chamber of Commerce, provide a service whereby all empty premises, especially shops in prominent positions, be offered a makeover similar to that done to great positive effect to closed Debenhams, not my shop. With the use of shop windows simulation, I suggest you can buy cheap wallpaper that simulates shop windows and do it as soon as possible. I was biking up into East Street from East Ridge, and on your right hand side, it's absolutely disgusting. You would think the town centre is where bomb. You've got peacocks, essentially, you've got the employment agency shop that's falling to pieces, it's empty, and I think it was the Army recruitment office, which is also empty, but they look absolutely ghastly. It wouldn't cost much money with cheap wallpaper to see that the town has not got horrible looking empty premises. Another one is my bank closed in North Street, which is a very prominent street. The TSB, you probably can see it, is all boarded up with bare boards. Looks absolutely terrible. So that was question one. We'll obviously come back.
You've probably got just less than a minute.
Right, well, where do I press the button? I don't operate these things. On that point. Sorry about this.
Alan, given the technical difficulties we're having, would you be happy to submit these questions next month?
Well, I think they do require an answer probably straight away. To you, but because the second question is slightly different and the third one is slightly different. But I mean, I was promised that there were going to be printed copy available. And this
During the leave of the council's item, I think we might find he may address them, because he has received the questions. So is that the case, Tom? Yes. So Tom has received. Councillor Deacon has received your questions, so I think he may be able to answer some of them tonight.
I'll run to do.
But otherwise, please submit
We
them
can do
again.
it as well as the road. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. The next thing is we have a presentation on strategic food defence works by Anne Rhodes, Principal Planning Officer. Blood defence. I need to get some emails. Blood defence works. And I think as council, you've all received paper on this. I don't think we've had an opportunity to read. So Anne, you're going to speak for 5 minutes, and after that, well, we're going to have 10-minute open time for questions after that, which we will restrict to 10 minutes.
Can you hear me okay? I was going to just pull this a little bit closer. Oh no, I can hear myself, sorry. Good evening, councillors. Thank you very much for inviting us along this evening. I'm Anne Rhodes, Principal Planning Policy Officer at Family Council, and I'm here with my Environment Agency counterpart, Alice Lamb, to give you an initial update on the strategic flood mitigation improvements scheme and to ask the councillors how they would like us to involve you and keep you informed again on it. A little bit of background. Taunton has a notable history of flooding starting in the 1960s, the late 60s, the 80s, and most recently 2012. And a little bit of background here as well is that Taunton's at risk of river flooding, and it's river flooding we're here to talk to you about tonight because of the number of multiple watercourses that enter the Tyne upstream of Taunton, in central Taunton, and down at Arthur. When the Tyne is at full flood, these tributaries aren't able to discharge into the Tyne adequately, and that's what increases the river flooding for Taunton. These two maps show base dates of 2019. This is what would happen in a 1% flood event of 1 in 100 year event in October 30. And then what would happen if we do nothing 100 years later, taking into account climate change, which is the equivalent of about 30% increase in the river capacity. The Taunton Strategic Flood Alleviation Improvement Scheme. Sorry, it's a long title. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. We should have come up with something much shorter. Was a project that looked at initially a single strategic solution upstream of Bradford-on-Tyne. When the feasibility work was done on that, it became unaffordable in terms of the cost. So we then looked at a suite of smaller measures that could be phased over 30 years to provide flood alleviation for Taunton. And this illustration shows those locations in Taunton. 3 of those schemes were granted consent by the then Sunset Western Taunton Council to take forward as projects. Those are on this map, TTC 5, TTC 10, and Long Run Meadow. So those 3 short-term measures. The first is the left bank of the River Tyne between Town Bridge and up towards Freed Hill. We've done lots of survey work in the last 18 months on that, and now we know that there are some areas that have sufficient defences that we don't need to look at. So we don't need to look at the blue line at the back of Ivory Park. What we need to focus on is Clarence Street and the BT Exchange, Town Bridge itself, and the red line that you see in that diagram that's stopping as the river bends west at the entry into Long Run Meadow. So we're working with the Environment Agency. We signed a collaborative agreement in February 2020 to take this forward. BME have been appointed to work on the detailed design, consent and permission work through the Environment Agency framework. We've completed a lot of survey data across a range of things: ecology, environmental impact, biodiversity net gain, arboriculture, ecology, and those are now informing some alignment concepts and some design concepts. And a couple of the options that we're looking at the moment are shown on those pictures. One is to increase the height of the existing defences and implement some additional footpaths. Another one is to set it back so that we can tie to some of the garden town aims about cycleways up towards Silk Mills, about improving cycle access into the town, walking into the town. The second project being taken forward by Somerset Council with input from the Environment Agency is at Firethorn Lock and the defence is up to Overbridge. So that has appointed WSP to help with the design work, and it's been managed in-house for Somerset West and Taunton. Again, there on the right are a couple of indicative outline designs that they're looking at. They were consulted on in summer last year, and some of the feedback has been incorporated into the new designs. A lot of feedback was pleased when we have less brick walls and less concrete, if we do some earth funding. So you can see some earth funds on one of those sectional plans. And then there's another one showing what could happen around Firethorn Lock to increase the protection around Firethorn Lock. Because there at the moment, when the home is in full flood, it discharges into the canal and causes flooding further downstream, canal flooding further downstream at Bartford. It's one of the principal areas. The third short-term measure that's had the green light is to improve the capacity at Longman Meadow. Longman Meadow is already a flood attenuation area and a floodplain, and that was implemented back in 2009 by the then Taunton Dean Borough Council under its project Taunton 1. We're looking there to increase the capacity and control better when that area floods and when the flooding is released back into the town. So what it will do is increase its capacity, wouldn't increase the number of days mathematically it would flood, but we would control better when it flooded and then when we released the water back into the town when the town level has dropped. That now has a dedicated project manager at Somerset Council, and we are looking to take forward some proposals about how that project will be managed going forward. There's a scope already been written and the Environment Agency have inputted into that. That's a very whistle-stop tour, but thank you very much for your time this evening. My name's Anne Graves and my counterpart here is Alice Lambert, and we're happy to take any questions. If it's something we can take away and come back to you if we don't have the expertise, we'll do that and email them to our responses.
And you're going to switch off your mic.
Sorry.
Can you leave the meeting as well, Anne? Sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much, Anne. Do we have any questions? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the, oh, because I've pressed the right button.
No, we need to turn. I'm doing business, thank you. Obviously, I represent North Town, and North Town will bear quite a lot of the brunt of any potential flooding, so I've got a key interest in this. I would just sort of make it clear really, for some very user-friendly, resident-friendly information and updates regularly about what's going on and the whys and the wherefores, and early sort of indication of what are the improved flood defences in this scheme going to actually look like. Because it's all just, I mean, I'm obviously on board with the need for this, but in relation to the North Town bits, from Freescale to the town bridge, and also in relation to Long Run, because a lot of us use Long Run and a lot, obviously we've got a big stake in that going forward as a nature reserve, just wanting a bit more concrete, easy to understand information about what the plans are and what the difference, so where we're at now and all of that. So just some really good, solid information and updates, not in public body ease, but something that's very user friendly and that's easy to explain to residents.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And do you have any answers?
Yes, happy to do that. Happy to have a conversation with Councillor Ellis. That's absolutely innocent, and she thinks it's a really effective way to communicate with the residents, whether it's leaflet drops or whether it's meetings or whether it's a web page. So can I contact you after the meeting when we can have a chat?
Thank you very much. Councillor Frederica Smith-Roberts.
Thank you, thanks for the presentation this evening. I'm wondering if it would be useful for you to come back perhaps to our community committee to do an update at some point, I don't know what that kind of does and what their agenda is, Because I'm wondering if it's about further detail into how many houses these schemes are looking to protect, and why we're doing it. I know that because I've got the history from being a Somerset West and Taunton councillor, but giving that context as to the reason why we're doing it for those at Taunton County Council, I think would be beneficial, alongside also the amount of money that is being spent here and the timescales, just so that people have that detail for when they suddenly start seeing work being done along the like River Canal Path or around Long Run Meadow, to help us be those messengers when we're contacted on the ground.
Yeah, very happy to do that. Shall I liaise with Tracy and Marcus about when those dates are?
Can I just shout? Thank you, Anne, for that presentation. Very useful. In terms of Long Run Meadow, the increased capacity obviously is needed. Does it mean that you're digging deeper into the ponds, so it actually allows more water to come in and then you regulate it? If that's the case, then who's going to take the longer responsibility of looking after this? Because right now we've got a problem in Coventry that, the previous, the attenuation ponds that has been in place previously has been filled in, and nobody's taking responsibility for it right now because of the problem. So it's not working. Please, thank you.
That's a great question. When we were looking at indicative designs for when we were doing the options work, we weren't looking at excavating. We were looking at including funds around the meadow and a controlled inlet and a controlled outlet. Now, that needs to be looked at in much more detail, and we need some survey information to inform that. They're at the early stages of Long Run Meadow, but we will be looking at those things, and also part of those discussions will be who then would be responsible. We need to also, during that design work, discuss who is responsible for that structure, putting a long-term maintenance plan in place. So we'll be able to continue those discussions.
Councillor Talley.
Thank you. I agree with everything you're doing. The one thing that concerns me is the problem isn't here in Taunton, the problem is farther out, up towards the Quantox. Now, I know this is a fact because we've been dealing with another place with the Environment Agency and also with the Canal and River Trust. They should not mention that at all. Things like Weekly Dam, it doesn't cost a fortune. That's what really is needed. To slow the water down, and I've got a personal interest. I'm involved on the extra floods. Thank you.
Yeah, again, really good question. So the flood work that we're doing is part of a bigger, wider picture, and we will also need those slow flow interventions that the organisations like Forum are working with landowners further upstream to help with the runoff that currently goes in some places into the tributaries of the Tyne. So that is also important, and it is part of the wider holistic picture in terms of all of these together. But this particular project is aware of that, but we are focusing on where the tributaries enter the Tyne further down on what we can do to mitigate and alleviate that flooding.
Thank you. Do I have any more questions on the floor? In that case, thank you very much, Anne, for the presentation. Now, before I invite Gordon up to speak, are there any other questions from the public? No. In that case, as was mentioned earlier, yes, Councillor Virginia.
Thank you, sorry. Just really a quick clarification, just to go back to public questions, just for the process of what we can expect going forward, and just so people are maybe watching at home and watching back later know. When a member of the public asks a question, do they get the answer on the evening? Because would they have been pre-submitted? Because if they're not going to get an answer on the night, then it's kind of puts up a barrier for a democratic barrier without getting an answer. So I just wanted to know what, if they've already been resubmitted and they're aware of, a response should be provided.
Here. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I believe policy is, the question is submitted and is it within 24 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah, 24 hours. We can respond to it. And I believe Councillor Deacon has prepared a response for Alan, because those questions were submitted. Any questions that are submitted verbally on the night, we don't guarantee there are answers. The Legal Council may not answer those. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, so Mr. Evans' question has been submitted.
Yeah.
But hasn't received a response tonight. But that's kind of the point, because you can't always wait to. Is it going to get?
Yes, so just to clarify, the Legal Council has prepared a response. Councillor Smith.
Clarification, it must be that Becky and I are on the same wavelength. At the moment, it would be useful to know whether we need to review our standing orders, because I think that there is a way of how the public wanting to turn up, ask questions and actually answering that question in that moment, so that people don't wait around. Otherwise, and you're more than welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but it might be that you just want an answer to that question and to go. And so I'm just wondering if there is a better practice that we can follow that gives them engagement into what we do and keeps it flowing. But it might be that I need to be done planning all this further. I'm just looking at section 3.5 and 6. But it might be that we get something for us to take away in the town.
Thank you, Councillor. I will refer the question to Donna, because you're probably best better than all of them.
That's fine, I'll come to the standing orders, see, I know they've got something in there about the public participation, and then I'll respond to you after.
I do believe it's the case that it's really verbally, it's not always guaranteed a response. Were there any other speakers from the public? In that case, as was mentioned by Tom Dubois earlier, I can finally publicly announce the Mayor's charity for this year, and I have gone with an organisation called Chaos, which are a Christian charity around helping refugees here in Taunton. I have personal experience with some of the refugees that they have helped, and I've had a strong passion for refugees and, of course, international development and aid and outward looking. So I would like to invite Gordon now to just spend 3 minutes just telling us a bit about his organisation. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, everyone can hear me. My name is Gordon East, I'm CEO and one of the co-founders of Chaos Refugees. I want to thank the Mayor and the Town Council. Actually, it's a real privilege and a massive honour to be the Mayor's charity for the next year. Our staff and volunteers and those that support us are genuinely excited to have that privilege. Chaos started back in 2016. Those of you that can cast your memories back, the Syrian crisis was in full flow. There was a photograph of Alan Kurdi washed up on a Turkish beach. David Cameron announced 20,000 Syrians would come to the UK. Here in Taunton, things stirred. A group of 3 churches and some local individuals got together to start a charity called Chaos. And they were one of the early pioneers of something called community sponsorship, which is where community volunteers actually get involved with the real practical resettlement of a refugee. We started that, did one family, and found it incredibly transforming, truly energising and exciting. Since then, we've gone on to, well, today we now serve all displaced people, wherever they come from, as they come to Taunton. Today, we operate a welcoming centre here in Hampton Street. It's open 4.5 days a week. It's dedicated to all those that are displaced. We also partner with other charities that operate 5 other welcome centres all across Somerset, supported by the Somerset Council in that act. We also directly resettle refugees, vulnerable refugees, in desperate need of resettlement directly into local communities here in Taunton and Somerset. We do our best to support those who come to seek protection here, those that are in the asylum system, those that are often unwelcomed. And we also use our voice locally, regionally and nationally to advocate on behalf of those that are displaced. Over the past 7 years, I've been completely astounded by the welcome in Taunton by ordinary citizens, whether they be neighbours, in schools, in employers, in churches, wherever they be. People have stood up to welcome those who are displaced. We are a grassroots organisation. We have far more volunteers than we have paid staff, and we're entirely dependent on those in the community standing up to welcome those that are in need. In January 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. At that point in Somerset, there were only a handful of nationalities that came here who were displaced. Since then, the world has changed. Today, we have over 10 times as many displaced people in Somerset. We have gone from a handful of nationalities to dozens of nationalities. It's a different place. If you were an ordinary citizen of Somerset back in 2021, you probably would never come across someone who'd been displaced, unless you were like me and had an extreme passion for it and had started a charity or one of the other charities that works in Taunton. But today, you, as an ordinary citizen of Taunton, you'll come across a refugee, you'll come across someone displaced. They're in the school, there'll be some in your school, there'll be some in your workplace, there'll be some living down the road, there'll be some in your sports club, there'll be some that go to your church or other place of worship. Your opportunity to go alongside them, to volunteer, to meet them, to support them is orders of magnitude more than it was 18 months ago. As a town, we will come across them. As a town, we are faced with the question of, do we support them or don't we support them? They will come. The world is in crisis. We cannot hide ourselves from that. In our centre in Taunton, we started in June last year, so we've been going just a year. In the last 6 months alone, we welcomed 2,000 visitors to that centre, just in Hammersmith. 2,000 people, so many of whom are displaced themselves, many of whom are hosting those displaced, people who come to ask us for support. We offer lots of practical support there, from English to employment, to help with budgeting, to help with how to settle here. And we don't want to go further. In response to demand, we want to set up a social enterprise and a cafe and an art space in Taunton, and we've got a special item on the agenda at number 7. But I want to finish, because actually I want to leave the words of one of those whom we serve. It's a young lady who came to be with us for just under a year. She's just left. 2 weeks ago, she left to go to another part, to settle in another part of the UK. But she wrote this letter last week. It says this: we saw you, how you stepped up for our soul and bodies. We saw your eyes when you made us smile. We saw your hands, your efforts, we felt your love. Your sympathy saved us. I hope I can come over to visit you all soon. So long, love you so much. And that complex.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you. So that's I'm officially my charity for this coming year. That now ends the time of public engagement, and we now start the meeting fully. So first of all, do we have any apologies for absence?
Actually, look at these complex agenda items.
Thank you. Second item, do we have any declarations of interest based on what's coming up on the agenda today? Yes, Councillor Evans.
I don't know if this is a brief declaration of interest, but having volunteers for the Army Cadets in relation to the Army thing, I don't know if that's happening. I mentioned it anyway.
Thank you.
Yes.
Always best to err on the side of caution. Third item, minutes for the previous council meeting held on Tuesday, the 11th of July. Has anyone any comments to make on those minutes? Has anyone any changes they'd like to make? Are we happy that they are an adequate reflection of that meeting? So do I have a proposer for that? Okay, thank you, Councillor Strauss, and a seconder, Councillor Tully. Thank you very much. Right, in that case, we'll move to vote. All those wishing to say that these are accurate recording, please raise your hand. Lovely, I'm saying it's announced. Right, so the next item is any communications from myself as the mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Councillor Garside for stepping in for me for July's meeting. I was away on holiday. I'm now fresh back from doing a Midland walk over the weekend. I'm sorry I forgot to bring my medal. It's a shame. But I'm just reflecting over the last 2 months and what I've been seeing around the town as mayor. I'd just like to highlight to begin with 3 things that I feel this town has done really well over the summer, and that things that we should really be proud of. The first one I know is already mentioned, the Armed Forces Day back in July. That's fantastic day. It's a real privilege and honour to be able to attend that. And thousands of people attended it, and I really look forward to seeing that continue next year, be even bigger and better. The next thing was the flower show. That was wonderful. I mean, that's such a draw for this town. It was a real joy. It's the first time I've been, and I loved it. And it was just meeting the people. I think I couldn't walk more than 10 yards without talking to someone. So I'm not sure how many rounds I actually see, but there were so many people to talk to. I met people from Burnham and Devon who made it all the way up here to come to the flower show. So it's a real great event in this town. It is also one of the oldest flower shows in the world. So we really do need to keep supporting that. As a side, I'd like to thank all the councillors who attended the town council stand during these 2 events and gave up some of their time just to meet and greet the general public and show the face of the town council at these events. So if you were there, then thank you very much for joining. The last great item was the LCC concert back in at the end of August. They were wonderful. I was privileged to go to the Anthony Bow concert. It was a wonderful singer, but I think just the organisation and the event, and again, just the number of people that event draws to this town and just makes us look a really good, vibrant town to live in. So I think it was really, really good. Last week, I was very honoured to be asked to raise the flag in recognition of emergency services here at Taunton. And thank you for that again, for those who turned up to support. It's really important that as a council, that we do acknowledge the great work done by our fire service, police service, ambulance service, and all emergency services. So thank you again for turned up to support that. This week we have our German visitors from our twinning town, Königsblätter. So I greeted them on Sunday. There are 31 of them, including their driver, so it's a huge number. They're out and about, looking at our museum, looking at our town, and it's really a great pleasure to see them. If you do see them about, please make sure, welcome them, say hello. And we have their official dinner tomorrow night. So, coming up next month is Taunton Carnival. As mayor, I shall be leading that procession. But again, I believe you've all, as councillors, been sent out invites to help volunteer to attend that event, just to help out. Please, again, I encourage you to do that. It's another great pull for this town, just something else that makes us look really lively and vibrant, and people do enjoy it. So please do come along and support that. And the other, talking about the Taunton Carnival, of course, next Saturday they are doing Sunday the 24th is the Taunton 10K run. That is run by the Carnival Committee. They do that to raise funds both for the carnival and for the charities that they support. I am running that. Not only am I starting it, but I am also running that. And I've got the mayor's running shirt for that. I believe Marcus is joining. Yes, Marcus Powers is joining me that one. So do come along and support that one. Come and cheer, come and help me along if need be. But just come and support the event. I think it's a great event. That happens. Lastly, I suppose it's my thought but though I always like to leave people with a thought, on Saturday I was at the opening of King's College's sixth form centre, and that was opened by Sir Michael Barber, the Chancellor of Exeter University. And in his talk, he reminded us of the great library of Baghdad in the 8th century, which was called, forgive my Arabic pronunciation, Bab al-Hakim, which means House of Wisdom. That's the library House of Wisdom. And he dedicated their sixth form that it would be a House of Wisdom. And I think as a council, we come here to debate and decide and make a lot of decisions. So my thought for us today is maybe also be a House of Wisdom. So with that, I shall end my deliberations, and I shall invite Councillor Deacon as leader of the council to give his report.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to first of all start by congratulating our clerk, Donna, on your marriage over the summer. So huge congratulations from all of us. I'm sure on your wedding. So nice that you've got a different name in front of you today. So congratulations from all of us, and also just very quickly just to wish Craig Stone, our events and operation manager, a happy birthday. I believe it's on the list. It's great. I'm not going to say anything. So now just to respond to the public speakers and questions that we have this evening, and thank you very much for coming along. It is very much appreciated you giving your evening to raise the concerns that you have. So I'll start with yourself, Mr. Rose, on the issue of public toilets around the town. I think all of us around this table share your concern about the quality and the condition of our public toilets in Taunton. All of us, without fail, and we've identified it as one of our top commitments to make sure that we're getting them sorted for the people of Taunton. And I think I'm really positive actually that having a town council now, we haven't had 50 years, will be a really key stepping stone in making that happen. So we have a responsibility for them, and we want to make sure the public see an improvement. We've started to push that forward, so we've been meeting with the contractor. We share your concerns about some of the quality of the work or lack of work that's being done in those toilets. So we are engaging with them as best we can. We are in that contract fix for the rest of this financial year, but we're looking at options for the future. We're actively looking at what we can do as town council to do things differently and better. We've now got our public toilets working group up and running, which is chaired by Councillor Smith-Roberts. That's already had some impact in terms of we now have a reporting form on the town council website, so anyone can report in any problems they see with any of our toilets across the town. Last night at a different committee meeting, we agreed the purchase of some footfall counters so we can start to get a sense of where we can move on which of the most popular toilets people are visiting. That will then build the case for us to go and access hopefully some additional funds to then not only improve the current state of the toilets, but actually do more with them, make them even better than they are, not to make them clean, but improve the service all together. I know you noticed that you have shared these concerns with me previously. I'd like to reassure you that I made sure that those concerns were passed on to both Craig Stone, our operations manager, and I believe Councillor Strauss. So I asked him to kindly get in touch with you and speak with you in his role as chair of the Community Services Committee, and I believe that conversation happened. So I'd like you to be assured that we are taking the concern that you've raised really seriously, and also happy to hear from you about any ideas you've got to improve our public toilets. So thank you again for coming on. Mr. Devlin, again, lovely to see you, and thank you ever so much for your questions and for emphasising them. That's really, really helpful. I'll start with the empty shop premises. Again, a concern that many of us around this room have, and I think many people across the country have actually. I don't think Taunton's alone in having empty shops and empty units, and we see the sad news of Wilko and what's happening and the impact that has on local people and employment as well. So we all share your concerns with that. I do just want to quickly, I do think, although we have some empty shops in town, we've actually got some really thriving areas to go and shop, and particularly independent businesses. And we should be proud of that in Taunton. So the Independent Quarter, Bath Place, Station Road, just to name a few. So I think we should be proud that we do have those businesses and people are opening up shops actually in our town centre. So I don't think all hope is lost on it. But I agree with you that we should absolutely be exploring options about how we make those frontiers of stores that are empty, but more appealing to the public. There are complexities around private ownership of those buildings, but we'll do all that we can working with people like Chamber of Commerce to improve the aesthetics of those buildings. I know your second question was around littering and littering across the town. My encouragement here is to continue to report any littering we see to Somerset Council. So they have a team who are actively out and about and will respond to litter requests when they receive them. So please do keep reporting that through the website. You mentioned specifically the railway bridge, and I'm sure you saw in the news yesterday, the unfortunate incident with the birds and the bridge by the railway. Again, it is a responsibility of Network Rail, but we will actively engage with them to make sure that they're taking steps they need to be taking to protect, particularly the underside of the bridge, so we can avoid some of the mess that results as a result of that. But again, we'll do what we can to town. Our town warden, I know when he's out and about see littering, we'll do what he can to solve that. But at the moment, we're scaling up. So as we know, it's the case of the town council, I'm sure we'll be able to take on more in that area. Your third question was around the highways and say some of the roads and things around town. Again, that does sit with some of the council. We often feed in some of the council concerns that we see around town, and I would encourage you to continue to do so. But again, the best way to do that is either do a flow through with your local councillors. I know that there are improvements happening, so the Wicks roundabout is currently being improved by Somerset Council, which has been much overdue. And the other thing I know that Somerset Council are also really starting to do is to hold contractors to account when they are doing works and not completing them properly. And that's something that's not been done for a long time. So I think there was media reports of BT being fined again recently by something else for not having done works properly. So we're really starting to get on contractors from sort of council, also as town council on that as well. So thank you very much for your questions, and I hope that helps. And we'll do again soon. The very final piece of my update, I just wanted to touch on antisocial behaviour, which I know we've all already heard a lot about as well over the summer, and we've seen some of our local businesses being impacted by different incidents of antisocial behaviour in recent weeks and months. Personally, I can say on behalf of the council that we're really saddened for those businesses. Again, lots of small independent businesses who have been affected, who particularly go in front of this. So we're sorry to them that these incidents have happened. I have recently attended a partnership roundtable meeting on Friday, just gone, attended by other partners such as the police, Parkwalk, Somerset Council, local businesses, Amanda Towns, MP. There was a real commitment around that table to work together to help tackle these problems. But I think we also need to understand that is in the current context of really limited resources for both local government and our police force. So we will do what we can working together for our town. I'm confident that we can make improvements, but we do need to keep sending the message up the line that the funding and also needs to come through as well, so that we can keep doing more on antisocial behaviour. But as a town council, we have taken action. So I know the mayor very kindly visited lots of the affected businesses from the recent incidents. I met with the Chamber of Commerce to discuss their ideas about what we could do. We've covered the cost of the damage to the shed cafe, Goodman's Gardens. So we've got some money to them to help repair the damage there. We're looking at longer term options to make that building more secure. We're exploring where we might be able to invest in additional CCTV locations around town. And that might not be town centre, but where we can around town, improve the visibility of our CCTV. And another idea that we're starting to look at this early days is a street marshal or a team of street marshals, particularly focused on Friday and Saturday evenings around the town. And really those individuals will be a key point to be communicating with businesses that are open in and around town, making sure that the police are aware of what's happening. So it's no more eyes and ears on the ground, really. So it's early days, we're exploring that option. We know it's got to work elsewhere. But I want to reassure people watching and in the room that antisocial behaviour, that we are doing what we can as a town council to start to tackle some of those challenges. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor. Do I have any questions for Councillor Deacon? No, in that case.
Yes,
So, Professor Gus.
yeah,
Yes.
just ask, why is it always classed as antisocial behaviour when some of it is actually criminal damage? You know, that all these acts, when they damage buildings, it's actually criminal damage. It's not just antisocial behaviour, antisocial behaviour, probably later, but actually smashing windows is actually criminal damage.
I think it's a fair point on the language. The language that mine takes that police use as a catch-all term. So within antisocial behaviour, there are lots of different things that could look like. But as an in the round, yeah, you can go right out and take examples where it's similar to others. It's solving, I think, the problem in its rounds rather than specific incidents.
Do I have any other questions? In that case, we shall, before we to item 7. We'll go to item 6. I've got reports from chairs of committee and subcommittees. So my chair of finance and governance, if I can invite Councillor Tully to report on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, we had a meeting last night, in fact, this time that's not here. We again went through a lot of policies, and I'm going to read them, but we're going to go through them. You might as well hear what the policies are. The freedom of information policy, the gifts and hospitality policy, the data breaching policy, training, council training policy, paper and electronic communications, that policy I'm not going to cover, complaints procedure and purchase order amendments that came with the last meeting. We had one or two things we need to change on it, that's been changed, maybe around past. All of the policies have been passed. But Mr. Mayor, can I just say something? I said last night, and maybe people don't take it seriously enough. These policies are written and when they go through us, but every single councillor here is responsible to know what those policies are. It's no good saying, well, that small lot have gone through the policies, we don't need to care. If you're going to be good councillors, you should all read them. Now, I know that the clerk says they're going on online, so there's no excuse. If we have to read them, I think you should all read them. We also had one or two other things we have to deal with. One which Tom brought up was with the toilets. There's also a survey for Castle Green and Victoria Park toilets. There's money allocated for it, about £800 each. This is important. Again, we need these to go through. The toilet one which the council has already mentioned, I won't go into that, there's no reason to. We also went through the list, and again, the list of payments, the income and expenditure, the annual investment, all this is online, and every councillor should be looking at it. If we make a mistake, you should be there to say to us, we're going to come to your meeting, you've made a mistake here. We really need you to say what is right or wrong. I'm sorry, I've done too many parish councils, and one or two people decide what's going to be in the policies. The rest of them don't even know about it. You know, it's something. It's important. It's the cash for this town which needs to be done. The only other thing I was going to do. We also looked at the possibility of place, which is it's an investment spread of our capital throughout the thing. We couldn't agree on it. We've asked it to come back to us again. We feel that it's not quite, or one or two councillors in, and I personally also think the same thing. It's not quite what we should be looking at other ways to put money. I really, anybody's here old enough to know. Remember what happened with the Iceland banks when they went pear-shaped, and a lot of councils lost money, including my council in Watford. That's all I've got now. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. Do we have any questions? In that case, I invite Councillor Strauss to talk about the community services.
You're only okay. The minutes of the meeting are online, so I'm only going to give you a very brief overview. Please look online if you want more information or ask me any questions afterwards. So I'm just going to run through very briefly what we went over. There was a report on parks and open spaces, specifically Greenway and recreational ground, where there were issues with works not being completed. Public toilets came up under community services. The green flag status of 3 of our parks and specifically waterways were discussed at this meeting. There are shared parks and play areas, which again causes issues which we are continuing to look into. And most importantly, perhaps, we set up a number of working groups. Now, working groups are not subcommittees, they tend to be fairly informal, but we involve members of the public as appropriate as well. And these were under community services in the following areas. So community, business and public relations working group set up, an accessibility, events, parks, allotments and public places, arts and culture, and civic and twin. And in this regard, we hosted meetings here for both our twin town committees here, for Lisieux, France and Königsbrücke, which you've heard about from the mayor this evening. Also the Goodman's Gardens Bridge, very, very important that we continue to look at ways of not even refurbishing, rebuilding that bridge, because the old bridge is not fit for purpose. And we had an in-depth discussion with Somerset Council to explore ways in which this might be done. The finance will have to come through Taunton Town Council. The Somerset Council has made it clear they haven't got the funds to do it, but we are getting a huge amount of help from officers of the council and from the councillors to find a solution. So please don't think it won't be replaced. We're pretty confident it will be, but how we do this does need to go into some detail, and we are progressing this as quickly as we can. And finally, Christmas lights, that came under discussion. You'll be pleased to know that we'll have a very nice showing of Christmas lights once again in Taunton. And if I've got just a moment, I will just mention town twinning again, because it's very topical. The Königsbrücke team are here at the moment, and we're making sure that they are most welcome in this, their twin town in the UK. And I'm going to France, I stress at my own expense, but I'm going to visit Lisieux early next month to meet with our civic counterparts over there to strengthen the relationship. As I say, we had a meeting here with the Friends of Lisieux, and we're having a further meeting to develop structure. So town twinning, we believe, is something that's historic in this town, and we are definitely keen to continue it. And that, Mr. Mayor, is the conclusion of my report. If anybody has got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Strauss. Do we have any questions from councillors? Councillor, question.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on the bridge. And you said discussion taking place, giving information that's more likely to happen than not happen. Where are they on discussion of funding? Because how is that at least not really good?
We are talking about a lot of money. That's early days. Before we get to the question of the amount of money we need, we have to research what needs to be done. The meeting we had with Somerset Council was very well structured, and the officer responsible within Somerset Council is actually a bridge engineer. And he has been helping us structure a survey where we're going to commission detail as to how much it would cost with different options. Then it's a question, once we know what we want to do, then it's a question to see maybe through grant funding where we can actually source the money. Whether it's through grant funding, whether we agree to borrow money, we have to find out what we need first, and that's something we're doing. We need information, basically. We believe that the foundations of the bridge, according to the engineer, may well be satisfactory to put a new bridge on top and to reduce the cost. We just don't know at this stage.
So just on the survey then, who's paying for the survey?
We are, but it's been, we're being helped by Somerset Council to actually minimise the cost of the survey by concentrating on the key items. And that's under review at the moment. Again, I can't give you a figure because we haven't, until we know what's required in the survey, we can't take that any further forward at this stage, but it is something that we don't want to spend money unnecessarily. But it is, as I say, under review. We've only just recently had the meeting within the last few weeks, so it's very early days yet. But the mood of the meeting was definitely to find a way of replacing the bridge.
Thank you very much, councillor Ellis.
I just want to thank colleagues because as somebody who's ward has also very angry upset people in it, and I think actually will speak back for everybody in this room. Pretty much so. I just want to say that it means a lot of support with colleagues in the way that everyone is rallying around on this issue. I think it's really good. We did have a really positive meeting with Somerset Council, and so yeah, I think it's a really good thing for Taunton, and residents can now have some hope that we may one day, more and hopefully not too distant future, get our wonderful bridge back.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Deacon.
Just on this topic, like, just to reassure councillors that no money will be spent on a study or anything like that without coming into council's first, so there's no point in spending anything until it comes in front of council, be decided or not.
Absolutely. Right. No more questions. I can move on to the Chair of Planning, Development and Transport, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, with planning, there's not a lot you can add to the minutes of the meeting that are already in the public domain because nothing happens in between. The only thing that happens in between is the transport side of it, which we've got a working group. And it's more of a community item than actually a planning item because it's nothing to do with roads and stuff in planning terms. It is transport for the community, buses and cycle routes and stuff like that. And I do find it very, very strange that this is on planning because we don't do any planning towards that. So, you know, I'm looking at wondering in the future if the transport should be on community services because it's serving the community because you've got all the buses and being able to access places, it's pavements, it is there's something isn't there now to do with coming from Wellington to Taunton on the old canal path. Well, that's nothing to do with planning. So I do find that it's very strange that transport is on there. But as I say, I can only say that as far as I know, the minutes that are read in the public domain are correct on this. You know, there's nothing else that goes on in between the meetings. So thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Do I have any questions? Councillor Stress?
It's just an observation. I myself thought when I proposed this working group, it would come under community services. But I was advised by an honour at the time that it was more appropriate that it came under the planning committee. However, the issues that we're talking about are really things like bus stops and bus shelters, which are not providing transport as such. So I'm more than happy for it to come under community services if that was the wish of the council and indeed subject to permission to do so. So it's out of my hands. This was what we were advised and should be structured. So if I could ask Donna Maisie, could you just comment on that?
We can have a see where it falls. We'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I need to. Thank you.
Lovely. Do I have any other questions? Councillor Hills?
Sorry, Venus, not so much a question for Marcia, probably maybe for more for Donna, sorry Donna. This is about neighbourhood planning. We've got some legacy neighbourhood plans that apply to wherever, but not Taunton one as such. And I just think, this would be this ought to go shoot to the top of our priorities, because it's about us, when Sill is coming in, we get extra Sill, and we have a neighbourhood plan. And I think we ought to press the sort of urgent button on this, and I can link it back to the report, for planning, but I was just wondering how that would work. Is it a full council thing? You set up a special group, you do it through planning, our planning committee? How does that work? I know it's like, it's a whole shebang, the neighbourhood plan. Absolutely understand that, but I just think we need a process, we need a kind of plan to how we get ourselves a neighbourhood plan for all.
That's right, so we have already started looking at the process for the neighbourhood plan, and we are going to pull together a report which will come to council for consideration. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, it's a huge project, so it's going to look at capacity and the setup, but yeah, as soon as we're ready, we'll send it over to you.
Lovely, thank you. Questions from Councillor Tubbs, then Councillor.
He's going to say, I was going to say.
No.
Councillor.
It's not a question as such, it is to do with the plans. It's quite a hard slog. It took Westmoreland 2 years with a mixture of different people. And I agree, it should be started as soon as we possibly can. But might suggest that, I know the talks we've been talking to the clerk of Westmoreland, to talk to Westmoreland. They know the reports and they know all which can and can't happen. We got people in outside that done quite a lot of work. People who knew about the plan. So if those kind of people on your side as well, I think it'll make it much easier. Thank you.
Well, I was going to say, is Councillor Tully's got quite a lot of experience on this, so he's got a friend that can be drawn on as well. Please say no, I say, because I know.
Yes, Councillor Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With permission of Councillor Hill, can I just make a very brief mention of the public transport working group?
Yes.
Thank you. As a courtesy, you're the chairman of the committee to which it reports at the moment. I'd just like to say that we've had a couple of very successful meetings and we are moving forward. And one of the areas that I would specifically mention is that of people with mobility issues. One of our own councillors, Councillor Gemma, who can't be here this evening, she is very concerned about a number of issues and they are being resolved. And I'd just like to make a statement as well. I was the chair of the Somerset Bus Partnership in Taunton. I've actually resigned from the Somerset Bus Partnership, both the pressures of council work, but also I did not want a conflict of interest between my role as chair of the Transport Working Group and my Somerset Bus Partnership activities. So whilst that will help them, we divorced those roles. And John Hassel and David Norley, who are known, I think, to many of you, they are still carrying on with the management of the bus partnership in Taunton. And we're making a lot of progress and more will follow in due course. So thank you.
Do I have any other questions? No. In that case, thank you very much, Councillor Tully, Strauss and Hill for your report. Duly noted. Now moving on to item 7, the City of Sanctuary Pledge. So, having chosen the Caris as my charity, myself and the officers went to meet them, and in discussion with them, they introduced this initiative, which Caris was hoping to bring to the council at some point anyway, and it seems a good point to tie it up now as the mayor's charity. You hopefully all read the briefing papers that were sent out and the pledge, and I won't read the recommendations just yet. What I would like to do is, there won't be any better advocate for this than Gordon himself. So please forgive me, but I'm going to invite him up now just for 3 minutes to explain where this has come from, where the initiative has come from, and why it's good. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you.
Working okay?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, building on what I said earlier on, City of Sanctuary, a national movement that holds the vision that the UK will be a welcoming place and safety for all and offer sanctuary for people fleeing violence and persecution. Now, as I've explained earlier, Taunton's already made some giant strides to this. And to got my hat, some other groups within Taunton, not just Harris. So Refugee Aid from Taunton and Taunton Welcome Refugees, Somerset County Cricket Club, the Rotary, many other groups have been working for a long time and very successfully and are widely supported in their work with refugees and those that are displaced. But by aligning ourselves with the national movement, we're actually able to do something more. We're able to bring other parts of society into a conversation and into some actions that can embed concrete things into our society that will allow those that are displaced and do come here to find Taunton a more welcoming place. And so, and the likes of schools, the likes of workplaces, the likes of our retailers, the likes of our neighbourhood schemes, the likes of our sports clubs, and so on. So that's why I put this forward. Why do it? 4 things. It gives us the opportunity to learn from others. So it's been widely going on for quite a long time. There are actually 55 local authorities in the local authorities City of Sanctuary network, 55 local authorities around the country, with an opportunity to learn from them and others. It's an opportunity for, it gives some structure to how to go about it. It provides a framework for the conversation. And lastly, we can ultimately, after a year or so, we can apply for a recognition so we can get a status and City of Sanctuaries Taunton that enables us to actually publicly declare that we are open for others. And then maybe, my hope is the rest of Somerset will also get a bit of a buzz and will follow on. So that's really it in a nutshell. It starts with a pledge from the council, and then after that we set up some action committees that we as Caris are happy to lead. We'll get others involved and collaborate. We'll be talking to RAF, we'll be talking to Taunton Welcome Refugees, we'll be talking to others that are keen to that are working in this space to see what we can do to make the town even more welcoming.
Thank you very much, Gordon, and as Alan said, look forward to working with you and supporting you as the mayor. So the recommendations is that we resolve the town council agree to sign as a supporting organisation and endorse the following pledges. Okay, so does anyone have a question for Gordon? Okay, yes, Councillor.
I don't have a question. I have a probably to declare a personal interest, but not prejudicial, in the fact that I'm the chairperson and finder of Refugee Aid from Taunton, completely voluntary, so I don't get anything from it. But in my view, this was something brilliant for us to take forward because Taunton has such a vibrant voluntary community to welcome displaced people. And so if we can show that we endorse that, I think that really helps all the organisations and kind of cements that actually Taunton and Somerset, but Taunton has really opened its arms, despite challenges, to welcome people of all nationalities and faiths who have been through some tragic circumstances. So I really welcome this.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any comments? You are free to ask Gordon any questions if you would like. Councillor Dean.
Yeah, sorry, not a question, more a comment to say. I think I was absolutely clear. I really want us to be a forward-looking and open council, and I think that signing on this is exactly the sort of thing we should be doing. So I want to thank Gordon for all the work that you've put in today, coming along and talking us through it this evening. I think it's wonderful that you're the mayor charity this year. I think this place alongside our shows how committed we are to town council supporting you. So thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Thank you. I think in terms of what if we do budgetary support, is this a case where you're looking for us to volunteer representative for meetings, or are you just looking for our support?
So first of all, we're looking for your support. Because that's absolutely key. We're looking for that starting pledge at a very public level. it would be great if we had people involved. We're always looking for volunteers. It would be fantastic. I'm sure, I've got a feeling we'll end up with a few working groups doing different things around the town. So very happy to have more volunteers. We're not, there's no ask for funding or anything like that. So this is purely a thing we're going to try and do. If we need funding, we'll go and get it from grants or donations or fundraising from the public, because this is a community-run led initiative.
Do I have any other questions or comments? And do I have any other comments or questions? Well, we can move on. So, I really would like to urge us all to vote for this, please. This is my chosen charity, and I'm very affiliated with Flight Refugees, and I really want to, from personal experience, I think it's a very important thing for us to do. So, I'm hoping that we can resolve to support the City of Sanctuary. I won't read it all out, I'll just highlight it, that we will endorse the City of Sanctuary Charter, that we will acknowledge the contribution of refugees and people seeking sanctuary to the town of Taunton, and that we are willing for our organisational name to be added to a list of supporters of the City of Sanctuary, and most importantly, that this council is committed to support the initiative to make Taunton into a recognised town of sanctuary. Well, I would like to propose it. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Packer-Hughes. So we move to voting procedures. All those in favour of adopting this recommendation, that is unanimously carried. I think that's a wonderful sign and a wonderful statement about this town. So thank you very much, Gordon, for bringing it to us, and also the opportunity of those that do it. And the very first year of the town. Thank you very much. I'm sure you're. Thank you for waiting for anticipation. Right, we now come to item 8, which is about stewardship. Are we moving straight to the presentation? Yes. So again, thank you very much for your patience waiting for this. So we're going to have a presentation from Jeremy Brooks and also the Land Trust, Simon Fox. So we're going to the presentation first. And I shall hand over Simon.
Hello, good evening to everyone. My name is Simon Fox. I'm the Major Projects Officer in the planning team of Somerset Council in the Taunton area, and my remit primarily dealing with the major sites in and around Taunton. Today I'm here to talk to you around Taunton Garden Town and the matter of stewardship, and with a particular focus on the Cometro Garden Community, which is known as Orchard Grove. So we have spoken to various factions of the town council to date. So thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you as a united body this evening to introduce stewardship and to explore the concept of stewardship and its context in the Taunton Garden Town and the opportunities that are available. We are using Cometro as a case study, primarily because it's the most advanced garden community in Taunton and is due to produce open space in the near future. And this presentation leaves and prompts key questions for the Town Council to consider. Those have been forewarned in your agenda papers. So when we talk about stewardship, effectively we can boil this down into one key principle, and that's ensuring that a community asset is properly looked after in perpetuity. So this is about long-term management and control, ensuring value for money, community participation and engagement, and creating a sustainable model for that maintenance and good outcomes for people to live in their communities and have sort of responsibility for the areas that they live in, instead of having, for example, a
arm's length private management company that simply said you're an invoice every year. So this concept of stewardship is interlinked with the Darttown vision, because what we're trying to do is ensure collaboration, empowerment, long-term stewardship of green assets, to create a legacy, to ensure that we have the community assets and infrastructure in the public realm that our new communities require. And within this, there will be new governance arrangements that can ensure community participation. So the intended outcomes of this is that the community will have a stronger connection to the natural environment, resulting in inclusive, safe and accessible active travel connections to the public transport. The community will feel empowered, involved and have a sense of ownership. Multi-use community assets will be maintained and enhanced to support social cohesion and interaction between existing and new neighbourhoods. Multi-use community assets will be maintained and enhanced to improve well-being, foster inclusivity and reduce inequalities, resulting in economic participation, the ability to experience high-quality cultural skills, development of residents who would be encouraged through learning and training, and all the cities will contribute towards carbon neutrality by 2030. So this slide sets out defining the operational path, and I'll just skip over that in the interest of time. So what we have done in Taunton is look at stewardship opportunities. We have a myriad of different sites at different stages of development, and the ones in the sort of mauve colour, or the sort of teal green maybe, are sites with live applications that have the ability to either switch or be influenced by a more comprehensive stewardship model. So primarily, these are Cometro, Stapleford and Monkton Heathfield, albeit it's recognised that Monkton Heathfield is outside the Town Council area. Some work undertaken by Aaron on behalf of Somerset Council started to group various sites as to their opportunities, and I'd say some are more time limited than others. Certainly, Cometro and Trouble, which I'm here to primarily talk about today, is the most pressing. The ARIC work also looked at various models, and this was to ensure that the correct model was pursued in order to achieve the aspirations and objectives of the Darttown movement, but also to try and root those models within the community. After some examination of the available models, there were 3 or 4 that sort of still met those objectives, and it's those that we are here to talk to you about. So the shortlist of models for consideration included the local council model, which included significant involvement of Taunton Town Council and, or if applied somewhere else, parish councils. The land trust model, and I'm joined this evening, or we are joined this evening by Jeremy Brooks, who's the area head of business development for the South Region. Jeremy has a few slides in my presentation we'll get to in a moment, but the land trust has significant experience and involvement in green assets across the country, so Jeremy's going to say a few words in a moment. And then the third model we looked at was the community interest company. It's fair to say that even within these models there are various options that can be tailored and whatnot, and that's where it can start getting slightly confusing. It's a bit like sort of ordering a bird and having lots of options as to what extras you want to add to it. You can add and take away things to suit the particular circumstances. So looking at Cometro in particular, we've got the western neighbourhood and the eastern neighbourhood, 2,000 homes, as you may know. And across those two neighbourhoods that make up the Cometro site, we have a plethora of different green assets and some built facilities that are to be provided. These include the general public open space, or POS as we sometimes call it, leaps and meets, which are effectively playgrounds. We have playing fields, or a playing field of 6 football pitches. We have allotments. We have a potential for a community hall. We have a local centre, which is effectively shops and those services that you find in local areas for local provision. We have an area of employment lands. We have a primary school, which I think is at foundation stage now, being built by Somerset Council. And we have a park and bus facility, which is adjacent to the A38, and effectively provides an intercept of Wellington generated traffic that's going into Taunton, where they may switch to a bus and make the last leg of their journey by bus. So we have various delivery and management responsibilities here. The public open space will be directly delivered by the developer and then has to be managed by either a ManCo or another body. And when I talk about ManCo here, this could be a private arm's length company, or it could be a company that is influenced by the town council. Similarly, with play areas to be laid out and provided by the developer and then managed by a ManCo or another body. The employment plan is to be sold privately on the market. Park and bus facilities to be managed by Somerset Council, akin to the park and rides that we already manage. And the local centre would be managed by a specialist developer or a ManCo. And as I said, the primary school is already under construction. That's going to be run by an academy. So we have this patchwork of facilities, and obviously the POS on a site like this is quite extensive, hence the need to get it right from the outset. So the delivery of these particular facilities is a bit more complex, and that's the playing field, the allotments and the community hall. And this is because of the community infrastructure and levy rules that applied at the time, which meant that we received a still income from the developers for every square metre of residential development they provide on the site, and then we use that money to effectively fund facilities. So, and this is a slight one-off in Taunton, I think probably in the county, the land on which these facilities fall first need to be purchased from the developer using SIL. And then once purchased, the setting out construction of these facilities falls to the council or another body to finance, again, perhaps using SIL, and then to manage. And like I say, the community infrastructure levy is key here, because regulations at the time set out a list of community facilities that were to be financed using SIL. And you pull that money together from not only this site, but other sites in the area to provide community infrastructure, like the primary school, for example, which is used by people outside of the site. It's to be tied in with the use of Section 106, which is our traditional method of securing community contributions, and to ensure there's no double counting. And we've already committed circa £7 million for the construction of the school. So that's both the purchase of the land and the actual money towards the construction of the building. But as was mentioned earlier, with regard to your future aspirations for a neighbourhood plan, this site is subject to a neighbourhood plan, and therefore still receipts to the town councils do total 25% of all still received, with the other 75% into Somerset Council. So the question of management responsibility basically falls to these questions, which is fundamentally is whether the town council is interested in acquiring responsibility for these aspects at Orchard Grove. That's the POS, the public open space, the green spaces, the play areas, the playing field and allotments, and to progress discussions with the developer around the community hall. And whilst we're talking about Cometro specifically tonight, you will have seen that map of the other sites in the town and building up now, let alone in the future. So does that interest extend to other downtown sites and assets? And is there interest in exploring a possible role for the land trust?
the Land Trust deals specifically with the PRS and green spaces. And those options, should the town council decide to formally decide on that responsibility, those options could be a manco operated by the town council with a household charge or service charge, a manco operated by the town council with a household charge and also using precept that you would also collect from those same homes, or a more traditional adoption model where the town council would adopt land and using precept wholly to maintain those spaces, as you do or will with the other spaces that you've inherited from the legacy councils. And as I said, this pick and mix can extend to a partnership with the Land Trust. And the default, and I would say from a planning point of view, the easy fallback position, which we would rather avoid, is the private manco that would solely sustain itself via a household charge or service charge. So just to introduce the Land Trust, like I said, I'm joined by Jeremy Brooks, and Jeremy's just going to talk for a few moments about the Land Trust approach to long-term stewardship with Taunton and Focus. So Jeremy, I'll hand over to you if you can, I'll move on to your first slide and I'll hand over to you.
Could you just let me know we can't hear them? Microphone.
Play next to the speaker.
On to the slides that are on the screen now. So the Land Trust is a standalone non-profit charity. Did you hear what I'm saying? Not very well. Did you get that? Did you hear me?
We can sort of hear you, but not very loud. It's come down to the back top. We're cutting out the maximum.
Can't change it.
No, just having that, just that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stephanie.
There we go. Hear that?
Everyone.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Or shall I? I'll get up my end. Okay, so I'm hoping everyone can hear me. So the Land Trust is a not-for-profit charity. We started or set up in 2004, and we were set up by English Partnerships actually, in order to manage many of the mines that were closed down in those days, and there's a lot of land at surface that the government threw a lot of money at. And fast realised that if you didn't have some form of stewardship process where that land was managed in the long term, it soon became sort of run down. In fact, a place where bad things happened, and the sort of, it became really format and not used in the right way. So we were set up, and about 10 years later, 2014, it became a standalone charity. We had two streams of income generally to enable us to manage the land. That's either by way of resident service charge or fixed payments, much like community payments, but we call them endowments. The difference between community payments and our endowments is that our endowments are invested and are ring-fenced to a site, and we only use the income from the yield to manage the site. But I'm going to get more to talk to you about service charge today. We're experts in estate management, and we focus on public open space only. We don't manage blocks. And we are experts in operating large service charge schemes. We don't take on any service charge schemes of less than 900 units. So it's 900 upwards, and I'm talking to people about all of the garden towns, garden villages that come through the planning process at the moment, like this one. We're very different to short-term, profit-focused contractors who may work on 3 to 5 year term contracts. We only get involved where we can we know we can operate long-term stewardship, and that's very much in keeping with garden village and town principles. The reason for that is, well, we have all the trustees who oversee all our transactions, and they check our viability and delivery for our charitable objects on all of the schemes. And so that's why we work on a long-term stewardship basis. We know we really deliver our charitable objectives. Well, we know we've got a long period of attachment to a site. Our favourite model is to take a transfer of a free model back if we can. In this instance, we probably wouldn't be looking at that because the scheme is quite advanced in its development. And just to touch on our membership of our member organisations that we are overseen by, for private sector, I'd say that like our main shareholders are people like Homes England, the Woodland Trust, Princess Foundation, they're listed here, but they're all quite big names to the Town and Country Planning Association as well. And just to explain, that long-term involvement in schemes enables us to deliver our charitable objectives. If I can't demonstrate to our trustees that we're going to be able to deliver those, I can't take the scheme on. So these are very important deliverables for us. The strongest really, I guess, is community cohesion. So developing that community, breaking down those phases of different house builder sections that are delivered on the phases. We deal with one community. Housing well-being, residents, education, delivering into the local economy using contractors from the local economy to support us. And of course, doing things right by way of environment and biodiversity. We do have a specialism in biodiversity, and we're quite hot on the whole biodiversity net gain aspect. So can you switch to the next slide? So this is a very high level slide about having looked at our approach to the Chiltern Garden Town. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So, subject to contract, we would recommend that the council confirms to developers that they can take over the ownership of the public open space that the developers deliver. And the reason that they do that is so that they can ensure that there's going to be a secure long-term stewardship of that space for the residents. that have taken up, you know, their homes in that, on those bases. So the developers remain responsible for the space until they fulfil, however, the transfer ready conditions and we're all satisfied that it's ready to come across from us. And we would work with the council on making sure that because whatever comes across is going to end up with us, so we would work closely with the council to make sure that that's the case. We would carry out some due diligence on the site, and there's been quite a bit to do because there will be existing covenants and titles across the phases that you've got on the Garden Town, and they're already in place. Quite often when we get involved in science, we seek to get involved at a much earlier stage where we can make sure that the covenants are in keeping with how we do things, so that there's a lot of consistency. We were worried here that there's going to be inconsistency, and so that we need this period of due diligence to check what's been put in place, phase by phase, and make sure that we can work with what's there, and that we can retrieve a service charge in order to fund the management service. We're pretty sure we can do that, but there would be a period of due diligence to make sure of that. We'd summarise our findings to the council, and we would make at that stage a formal proposal to the council confirming our approach of how we would want to enter into a minimum 30-year management contract. Now, let's stress that our trustees will probably require that to be, you know, an absolute given, and that there won't be any ability to break that. Again, because we need to show that we deliver our charitable objectives and social value of those sites. Our proposal will also indicate what we have arrived at in terms of service charge level. We price it, we will price all of the landscape plans so that we know what we're charging, and we can confirm that to the council. This will include, and we're very open about this, will include land trust management fee, which is shown there at £85 plus VAT. We don't charge a percentage against what we're charging. That really means that the higher your cost, the more return you get. We don't operate like that. We would fix that to RPI, so it keeps pace with inflation. We've got to be on other costs of what we're managing. And we were able to try and secure consistency in service charge with residents. But that will depend on the covenants that we'll be looking at in the due diligence process. But we always prefer to have consistency. If agreed, we will take on all of that public open space as it is delivered by the house builders, and when it's ready to be transferred, as I say, that's under the transfer ready condition. We're making sure that it comes across in the right format. Charges which we have, which are inside the service charge, which are charges that we make to which we would propose to the council, would include the setup costs, which effectively would be our due diligence costs, the time we spend doing that. Possibly the cost of the state officer in the early years on the sites. We always prefer to have the state officer on site pretty much from day one, and before the service charge levels can cover the cost of the estate officer, we look for the council to assist in meeting the cost of them. And we require as a charity our legal costs to be underwritten as well. Our performance will be underwritten by monitored key performance indicators as well. We believe that if we're not performing, it's fair that you would have stepping rights. But that's the only termination that we would expect on a site unless there's a material breach of contract, one of us becomes insolvent or something like that, but that would be written into the contract. Simon, I think that includes some photographs. Go to the next slide. So here's a couple of photographs of one of our sites. That's quite a well-known shot there of one of the sites of our site in Upton in Northampton. And that photograph is used as a primary example of what sites should look like sustainable urban drainage systems. So pretty good quality management you'll get from us. There's another quick shot in there of showing us working, delivering some of our social value at one of our sites in Chelmsford, our community gardens cabin. And there's a few more shots of the sort of things that we do working on sites with residents. There are a number of our schemes, activities going on site there, but we are big on working with communities. And and there are some more shots here of some of our schemes. Purely at top left is a site that we've had the housing minister around and various other people. It seems a sort of prime example of how you should operate service charge schemes. And I mean, those shots, I posted it themselves. Small one on the right at the top is I put in as a shot of one of our old coal mine sites, which I mentioned were the ones that we took over way back when we started. But they're just some shots there showing the sort of quality of management that we can deliver. I guess I should add that I'm basically North Somerset as well. I'm talking to you from my memory North Somerset, so I'm not located miles away. Thank you. Simon, over to you.
Okay, so thank you to Jeremy for that overview. So Town Council has some decisions to make, really, whether it would like to have some involvement in the long-term stewardship of the facilities at College Road, and then in what form they wish to have that interest, whether it's via a man-phone model that the Town Council would effectively elect councillors to as directors of that man-phone, that would then charge residents a service charge, and then that man-phone with that service charge could employ the land trust effectively as a land agent to do all the things that Jeremy's just set out, working in partnership with you to fulfil those charitable aims in their name and also in your name. And one of the other services that they could also deliver is to administer the actual service charge recovery. There still remains other built facilities that the Manco or the Town Council would have to manage directly because the Land Trust doesn't manage built facilities. But the Land Trust, in terms of that large swathe of green and blue infrastructure across the site, would then subcontract to local landscape companies or other bodies in order for that work to take place to their specification. Worth saying that any service charge that the Town Council would set as the Manco could be subsidised to a lesser or greater extent by the inclusion of precept that you also collect from those properties. So there's a model here with the Land Trust, and then there's a model without the Land Trust, which is effectively still a Manco, still made up of directors who are effectively town councillors who are elected to that post. It's still a service charge, it can still include precept, but effectively the Manco subcontracts directly, and the Land Trust doesn't act as a land agent in a different tier. Of course, the other model is that the Town Council adopts the land as the Town Council and uses precepts.
100% to maintain all the facilities on the site. So just to return to the main questions of the evening, is the Town Council interested in acquiring responsibility for these aspects at Orchard Grove? Does the interest extend to other Garden Town sites? And is there an interest in exploring a possible role for the Land Trust in the model that I set out? We've only slightly stumbled across the Land Trust model because at Cometro, as you will know, there are already houses that are occupied and have been sold, and therefore they have a different covenant arrangement than the Land Trust would traditionally require. So we've sort of adapted and cajoled the Land Trust into a different model that would work, including the Town Council as the all-seeing body managing the land code. So with that, I'll close the presentation and wait for any questions. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much, Simon. I'm conscious that we're coming into our second day. The issue of exploring the various options, Councillor Deacon, is there anything you would like to add, develop us in any one particular way?
My starting position on this is, so my personal experience really, I currently live in an area with a private management company, and my personal view is that that is a really poor outcome for residents. I think you've seen that the numbers come in and the bills come in for that, and the proportion of the management fees and therefore profit really worries me. So I think my starting on this, I think Simon actually you said this, but that is the least preferable option. I think for the residents who live there. Yeah, so I think I would say that I do want us to be able to be quite an active council in terms of what we do, proactive and wanting to support residents. But what that doesn't mean is that we should go into anything without knowing full details and facts. So I think we should be careful and diligent about any decisions we take. I don't know if there's a particular route that jumps out to me. I think working with the Land Trust sounds interesting. I think there's potential there. I think we need more detail about that. One question I did have for Simon, and you may have actually tried and apologise, was that the buying back of the lands would be executed by Somerset Council using still that Somerset Council holds at the moment. I assume it wouldn't be our still. So I guess there's two parts to that. Number one, does Somerset Council have the still funds in a pot ready to do that? And secondly, would the asset then be transferred to the Town Council, or would Somerset Council continue to remain the asset, but you're asking the Town Council to be responsible for managing the day-to-day?
So the apportioning and ring fencing still is a bit of a moot topic at the moment. It is our aspiration behind the scenes to ensure that Somerset Council attributes sufficient self to provide the facilities at Cometro and the other garden communities that have effectively created the still in the first place. The whole point is that the site creates still, and then most of that money goes back into providing the facilities. However, you may appreciate the still pot is a bit like a cookie jar, and everyone wants to put their hand into it, and therefore there are competing aspirations for still, and therefore the Town Council proportion of still is probably absolutely imperative to be ring-fenced towards these facilities. There's no getting around that point. Whichever way the land is procured through either the Somerset Council proportion of still and or the Town Council proportion of still, the asset would go to the ManCo, which we're proposing under one of our models be a ManCo that is directed by town councillors. So it wouldn't be retained within Somerset Council ownership, it would go to the ManCo. Or it could be adopted by the Town Council and then left for the ManCo to manage. So that's what I was saying about the tailoring. There are different ways of lining this up, depending on what the Town Council's ultimate view and aspiration is.
Thank you. I do have a number of questions. Sorry, everybody, I can't take any questions from me, which I think on the floor. So just said that these you were first, and then I should go to Federica.
Thank you, Chair. So excuse the rant because this has been a bugbear of mine for a long time. I too live on Sainsbury to Tom. And the word to describe the management company I can't use in this meeting. The problem with new build estates and this type of model in terms of an extra household charge is a double tax. And the council tax or the precept that is charged to property already, and in some cases since the town council created, have doubled. So the council tax paid for things like grass cutting, maintaining of play areas, etc. Now, in my ward of Maidbrook, the housing estates are looked after by the council, and Northwoods is paid for by a management company. Now, in the report it says here the Neville's North, so I presume that's phase 2 and 3 when it comes in. So they will be the same community, but they will be run by potentially two different organisations. Yes, well, that's going to cause a great deal of a mess with that. I personally believe that if we're charging precept, we should be our residents should expect the same level of service as someone who doesn't live potentially in a new build estate, because it's kind of like a double punishment. It seems you could afford a brand new house, but in actual fact, a lot of them is shared ownership, social housing, etc., and then still getting charged. So why are we not going back to the traditional model of what we're paying for is what we're getting? Because we're not, because the precept is one charge, and then those people are going to be charged again. Second question is, with Northwoods and their rules, can the current movement of Northwoods be taken on by the town council if they decide to have this grand model across whatever model the council decides to go under? So it's all under one umbrella as opposed to having some private companies, etc. And secondly, on commercial development, plans that I've seen by Taylor Wimpey is with plans for 2 local centres, not 1. So which one is it? Because obviously that will require a greater deal of seal money, a greater deal of money to pay for its production.
I think the point around double charging or double counting is an extremely valid one in this. It's one that you as politicians can decide to give great weight to. I think in proposing a Manco model of any description, our absolute aim has been to stop this falling into a private situation whereby you lose control of the charge that's being made, and you lose the local connection and local investment responsibility in that you pay the money, someone comes and cuts the grass the same year in, year out. Nothing ever changes, nothing ever gets invested in. And slowly, it just slowly declines because of no investment. So we see some type of town or parish council involvement being imperative. And of course, the district councils used to have that role and then decided not to perform that role any further. And in that void, private mancos filled. And that's why the developments that you're referring to are the way they are. So the town council can absolutely decide to adopt the land traditionally and use precept. And you would have to set your precept accordingly for the extra land that you incrementally acquired through adoption, because it doesn't all come at once, it comes in sort of phases. So you can financially plan your precept to rise over the years, mindful of pockets of green space and facilities that will come forward. Absolutely, that would be a very firm decision that we would be very pleased with. I think the question about whether sites that are currently under private mancos, whether they could be switched over to this new model,
is technically yes, but in my experience, looking at some of these, certainly one in Wellington and one actually at Westmoreland, there are mechanisms for that, but they can be slightly torturous in terms of there is a public vote that you have to administer, you have to garner enough support, you have to have reasons for getting rid of the incumbent man vote. So it's not an impossibility, it just needs a collective drive from the residents within that community to actually affect the change. It's not something that this council or Sunset Council could do for you. It needs the residents to feel that they need to make that change. But, and I absolutely agree with the point around the patchwork and the inconsistency. That's what's driven me on this mission for the last 2 years, trying to ensure that Commentry doesn't fall to the same fate as other developments. And that you have to draw a line somewhere and say, well, from here on, we want sites to be looked after in a consistent, long-term, sustainable manner, rather than you've got, 20 manholes over 20 schemes in a 20 square mile area. That's just not good from anyone's perspective, isn't it? So I agree with you on that. On the specifics of Commentry, there's only one local centre, and that is sort of in the middle of the development, and that's where the shops and services will be. But maybe we could have a chat at some later points to whether they're promoting some of the local centre that I'm not aware of. Hopefully that addresses the question that you raised.
Do you mind if I just come back? I think in the interest of time, do you mind if I go just very quickly to even questions short? Perhaps you keep the answers short as well.
Thank you. So first of all, it'd be great if we could maybe catch up about after this meeting, or if you get my details to you somehow about how to go about that process, about making that change, because we've got absolutely no problem with that at all. That's going to happen. I just need a process about how to kickstart that. And secondly, yes, what they're advertising on their map, where in their sales home, is two local centres. So it might be a little bit misleading. But for me, I would prefer the council do the traditional model.
Did you want to come back? Thank you. Right, now, we have Councillor Smith-Roberts, followed by Councillor Deacon, Councillor Byrne, and then Councillor Ellis. If you go to the order, and say you can keep the questions short.
So in my point of view, I really do understand where Giuseppe is coming from in relation to that double taxation. And I think that's just something that us as politicians have to think about. But ultimately, the council tax precept, wherever it goes, whether it goes into unitaries or into other parishes, is never enough to provide the services that people expect from it. So there has to be an element that when new builds come on, that there probably is something like this. I think my question is centred both around the steel, Simon, because my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected, is that steel, for every £1 given, we probably need £6 in order to provide the services that are expected of it. So for us, with my town council hat on, even the steel that we get from this development, and I think 25%, because we don't have a neighbourhood plan, is, I think you said needed to be ring fenced for this area, or at least look to say we need to fence in that area. Probably still isn't enough to even do the work that is being proposed here, that is vitally needed for that community, for the size of the development that is there. But I have concerns around the financial implication of this council taking it on while this council is only in its first year, and then having to provide this opportunity. So for me, I feel I'm not quite ready to make a decision this evening. I don't think we're being asked to do that tonight. It's more about setting up a working group, but I think there are large questions to be asked of it. My other question was based around how does the process work as to the choosing of these options? Why is it that the developer can just not put it out to tender, and is it up for the highest bidder to come and take forward that, because why would they choose a town council over a management company? Because a management company would have a vested interest in doing it because of the profits that they can make. So I'm wondering if there must be some statutory rules that mean they have to choose councils first before you go to the last resort of a management company. I think my biggest concern though is the implication on our budget, both on sale and on revenue, by taking something like this on, even though we will benefit from the reset of these coming into the town council, perhaps, but not all of it, and I'm just worried about the impact on our budgets overall.
Yeah, I think we were mindful of the budgetary issue, which is why we were keeping the Manco option with a service charge on the table, because at least then the town council could recover 100% of the costs of maintaining these facilities until a time when finances may allow a greater subsidy due to preset. So in my mind, it was we're on a sort of river where we've reached a fork in the river. One goes off to a waterfall, which is the private Manco, and there's a point of no return. Or there's the calmer water, where at least we've got a paddle to try and guide our way through. And the prospect of the town council Manco being able to charge a surge charge would at least keep your head above water, keep you afloat, to allow in the process of time to look at the financial modelling and see that you weren't being overly exposed financially. And I go back to the point that there isn't sort of 40 hectares of green space that's going to be dumped on you tomorrow. These things will come incrementally over preset terms that would allow you, and when we're working together on this, we'll be able to say, well, that's what next year looks like in terms of amount of green space that's coming forward, that facility being provided, and therefore with Sally, you'd be able to then say, well, that's what the exposure to the Manco would be, that's where the service charge would need to be, and we might decide to reinvest some preset into that to keep the service charges as low as possible. I mean, I absolutely agree with the point being made. It's a bit like Hobson's choice. Would you rather have if you had to pay a service charge, would you rather pay it to a Manco that's managed by the town council in your best interests, or pay a charge to a private Manco? And so I've sort of navigated all those questions, and I still believe that the town council can have the influence that they wish without the financial exposure. The issue over still in providing the facilities in the first place is an issue that we need to carry on working with officers of Somerset Council and the elected members there to ensure that we are listening to and we're trying to get some of that still ring fence, because my concern is there's a misapprehension that the developers provide everything. They don't. This model is predicated on us receiving still from them millions and millions of pounds and then reinvesting it back into the facilities we want. If we don't do that, those facilities don't get delivered. And therefore, as the main advocate for Cometro, I'm the one in the group putting my hand up saying, don't forget about us when money is being attributed to strategic flood schemes and other things that are for the benefit of the town, but not for the benefit of Cometro, but Cometro is paying for it. And that's where the conversation goes way above my pay grade. And, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to set this out on a more sustainable footing with the control of the town council, because we genuinely believe that's in the best interest of residents moving forward.
Thank you very much. Right. I'm conscious that it's 8:15. What time do you use it for suspending?
We've got 3 hours, so.
3 hours from 6 o'clock. Then we have to suspend pauses. And we're kind of halfway through the agenda. Yes. And I know that people wanted to ask questions, but actually this item was a presentation, and there were 3 questions to answer. And actually, the main outcome of this discussion is to resolve to set up a working group. Are we happy just to move on and answer these 3 questions and to sort out the working group? Okay, so the first question is the council interested in acquiring responsibility for these aspects that all should grow? And the public open space, including 4 leaps and 1 leap, playing field and allotments community hall. So, just a question. So, I'll show of hands. Are we interested in taking responsibility? Please show your, raise your hands if you do want to. So, okay, thanks very much. And just in case there were any dissenters, is there anyone who does not want to show interest? Any abstentions? Okay. Question 2. Does interest extend to other garden town sites? If the interest does extend to other garden town site assets, please raise your hand. There's, thank you very much. Does anyone want to answer no to that question? Any abstentions? Right. Question 3, is there interest in exploring the possible role for the Lands Trust on this? So there are options for further consideration, and I think Councillor Deep as leader of the council, I think you are advocating towards more going towards town membership, I think, on this.
I think with respect, Mr. Mayor, I don't think I'm advocating any particular route at the moment. I think I'm in the mindset of we should do something. I don't quite know what that looks like in the detail yet.
Okay. So, is there interest in exploring a possible role for the Lands Trust for open space assets? If the answer to that is yes, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. The answer is no to that question. Please raise your hands. And are there any abstentions? Okay, so lastly, to resolve to set up a stewardship working group, we need 2 to 5 members on this. So, first of all, are we happy to set up a stewardship working group on this? Please raise your hands if you are happy to do so. And accept the terms of references. Thank you. Raise your hands, please, if the answer to that is no. Any abstentions? No. Okay. So we now need to choose 2 to 5 members. So do I have any volunteers from the floor who would like to be part of this? 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I think that's happening though. Okay, so we have Councillor Stengel, Councillor Deacon, Councillor Tully, Councillor Ficini, and Councillor Lester. So my next question to everybody, with those 5 people, you can put those in.
No, you've already been reading.
Okay. Is everybody else happy with those 5 selections? The general agreement. There's still isn't some nod, but it's not. So, right. Okay. Are we happy to move on? So, constantly we did have a allotted hour on that topic. So, thank you very much, Simon, for that. And thank you very much, Jeremy. So, if you'd like to go on the basis of you. Okay, lovely, thank you. Right. Item 9, we have a community review to consider and discuss town council participation in community review project. We have so I'd like to invite Catherine and with some presentation. Do you know how long the school be?
Other people short.
Okay.
Right, thank you very much for inviting me. I'd love to come and present. Feedback somewhere. Right. Let's try it. Right. Okay, I'm going to present to you about the possibility of undertaking a community review at Taunton. So my name is Catherine Armstrong. I'm a senior community officer. Just going to run through the benefits and the proposal that's being offered to you this evening. So just a little bit, I work for the Community Council of Somerset, and we're a charity that was established in 1926 and have been supporting people living and work in Somerset on a wide range of projects. And all that time, you might have heard of us with community agents, community building service, Somerset diverse community, and so on, including community consultations, community reviews. So just to really explain what a community review is, you might have heard of it as a community plan or a town and parish plan. It's not an enabling plan, but it can provide information and evidence to feed into an enabling plan, which obviously we've been discussing this evening. So it is a useful first step to an enabling plan. But it is a document which is prepared by the community for you to understand the needs, opinions and ambitions of your community, which is obviously a real benefit as a new council starting out for yourselves. And the consultation then translates into an action plan which helps you move forwards and be able to achieve some of those ambitions and resolve some of those needs. So the benefits of undertaking a community plan is to engage your local community, to have their voice heard, provide funding, evidence for funding applications that you might want to make, evidence for partners, the LCN and aims strategic influencing, help with budget setting so that you know where the priorities are from your community point of view, and springboard into action. And the other benefit is that the offer that we have this evening is for free support. That's always something that is so the outcome will be a community review, which is evidence-based, an action plan, which is needs-based, and a funding plan, which provides you the way forward. So the process that we envisage undertaking in Taunton, if you went down this process, would be to establish a steering group to make sure that we had engagement from all 14 of your wards, either through the councillors yourselves or identified people. Establish steering groups in each of those wards so that we can get that very local knowledge, who can identify hot topics and themes that you want to consult on, and then to create a survey which will form the basis of the consultation. But we would also do some focus groups and local engagement to get people to respond to that consultation, and also to make sure that we've got a good geographic spread across the town and interest group spread as well, so that we're meeting all our different interest groups who might not traditionally engage in a process like this. We'd analyse the results and write a report, work with you to create a draft action plan with the steering group and the subgroups, and produce a funding plan of those actions to give you ideas of where you might seek some external funding. So it's not all down to your budget to achieve the actions. And then obviously the implementation of the actions and monitoring will then be for you to do on an ongoing basis. So that's a very quick run through of the process that we've envisaged in Taunton. The topics that we would propose to look at are very broad, but we would not suggest you look at all these topics, but these are some of the hot topics which I'm not going to run through. But there may also be some very specific topics to you in Taunton that we would work up questions to make sure that you get the answers. You ask the right questions to get the right information to give you the information that you need.
And we would engage with residents in a wide range of ways, which might include some incentives, vouchers, that sort of thing, but through events, leaflets, posters, your existing communications, social media. Critical to this is councillor engagement and officer engagement, but also that local word of mouth on the ground, because without that, this sort of engagement doesn't work. And we know that from other communities that we've worked with. We really need that buying from the councillors to be selling the process and engaging people to undertake the consultation. So the offer this evening is a funded project which is being funded by Somerset Council in partnership with SALC, and we are the delivery partners of that. It is free support. There are a few elements that would need to be funded by yourselves, which I'll come on to in a very brief second. And we would be looking to complete this in a 12-month process, so it isn't everlasting. You would, in 12 months' time, have your plan, your actions, your priorities to be able to move forward. So what we would do is to provide you with an advisor, a point of contact, but also a team of expert support, give you one-to-one support, take you through each step of the process, support with the community consultations on the ground, support with the survey creation using our tried and tested questions, but some bespoke questions as well. Support with engaging with communities, go out with you to groups and ensuring that geographical and group spread. Marketing material, and we would help, we would do the analysis and write the report alongside you, so you haven't got to do that bit, which is quite a slog. And we would support the creation of the action plan. We can't decide on the actions because that's down to you from the findings, but we would be able to give you some advice and guidance on that, and then make recommendations for funding. And there's also a toolkit to help you in those processes where you want to do some of it yourselves. What you need to do is to make a decision and make an application by the 31st of October. You would need to commit to the process by signing an agreement that will be sent to you, which is just signing the agreement of the things that we set out about what you will do and what we will do. Agree a workable timeline with us from both parties, so that we've got the capacity to support you and it works for yourselves as well with other work you've got going on, and to create an initial steering group by December of this year. We want to make point of contact, and we want the steering group to attend regular training sessions and sessions with us to help us engage with the community. And as I said, we really need your buy-in to help us engage with the right people in your community and those who don't normally engage. The costs that you would need to cover if you wanted to do these, you won't necessarily want to do all of these things, but would be any printing costs. So if you wanted to do printed surveys or leafleting, any posting, if you were going to do distribution of those leaflets, any specific events, obviously we can piggyback on other events, but any specific events and venue plan, or any incentive costs for completing the survey, which does attract more people to complete the survey. And you would need to agree to encourage and oversee actions. A lot of those actions won't be necessarily town council led, they will be community group led, but there will be some town council led actions, and we would want you to agree to support those and to kind of encourage those to go beyond the writing of the plan. It's a living document. And as I say, the last one again is just to reiterate to complete it in a 12-month period and embark on those actions that arise from it. So that's been a whistle stop told. But any questions, I'm very happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Smith-Roberts.
I think on initial look, I think I support this. I think my question isn't there for you, Catherine. I think it's more for our officer team as to what capacity we have within our own resources in order to do this and support this happening. Because it's all well and good, if I've understood correctly, us wanting to do this as a council, but do we have personnel capacity to make this happen currently?
I just looked at the date for the expression of interest, is 31st of October. So I think we've got time to go away and look through any reform commitments to see what we've got as in priorities, have the discussion, see what we've got in capacity, and then perhaps bring it back to the October meeting. When we've got a clearer idea of the work that's involved with doing it.
Councillor Fernandez? Oh.
It's just to say, I think I support this as well, because I think it would be, again, depending on commitment, from, time-wise and everything from our officers. But I think it's a really good incentive, and I think it's a good, it will be a good way, particularly for our community services group, to get, to have handle on what actually our residents and what our communities want from us as the town council. I think that's really important. And certainly, for me, as town councillor, I want to represent that community and obviously and ensure that, we are effectively carrying out what they would like us to do. And I think that's really important. And I think doing something like this as an exercise, I have had a look through the chart, one chart, and there's some good things that came out of that. So I think, I think it's a good idea if we can do it. Thank you.
Just to say, I can certainly work with you to give you more information on what officer time would be required. But it's, to say that the Somerset Council who are funding this and Sam are really keen for you as a council to do it, because you are a new council, and it would give you that evidence from your local residents and also create a community, that's a community collective knowledge and community as well. But we can certainly have a conversation with it later.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Just a quick question, how much does Somerset Council who have new money for important things that people have said they want, how much are they putting into this? I'm just curious. I mean, I think, generally, I was kind of warm when I first heard the idea. I think I kind of want to go for more sort of specific focus for it, rather than it just being sort of anything and everything, because I think we know what people kind of want. The difficulty is delivering it in many cases, but I'm very interested to hear how much the officer time will be involved. I just don't want to start wrangling in committee, steering groups and working groups. I can see them sort of proliferating. But yeah, it'd be good to know, what the officer take on it is.
So the money that Somerset Council have funded SALT to ask us to work in partnership was money that was through the COVID recovery initially, and it's to support a number of, we've done phase 1 of this programme, and we've now been from the success of that with 18 parishes and towns across Somerset. We're now looking to fund, depending on how we put this as a package, and it depends on which councils come forward as to how many we fund. So the first strand was 75,000, this is 88,000, and it depends what size communities come forward as to how many we can deliver this time. But it would, I think, for Taunton, off the top of my head, the budget is about, we put a lot of our time in so that it reduces your time. The budget would be about 24,000.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Deacon and then Councillor Twos.
Thank you very much. I think, given that assuming that we're here lots of time is absolutely something that we should be doing. In fact, I mentioned it in passing to the Chamber of Commerce when I opened last week, and they were really, really interested in this and working together on something about how they can also benefit from it in all the other groups around town. I know the LCN focus around young people is really thinking, well, I think that could play into this quite nicely. So I think you're right, probably about being focused in probably 2 or 3 areas to try and go and explore a bit deeper and go too broad. But I think seeing we can find our own tools to help do it, I think I'd be really keen that we do this.
Not a good time after I leave us to say this, I guess, after this. But I'm more cautious, like Caroline, Councillor Ellis. I think this is great to go out to people in my community who, as mentioned, it will be a struggle, unfortunately, to get people to engage. And then I fear that we will get a lot of things back that are just unachievable. And I can hear someone saying to me, you asked me in this survey what I wanted, I told you, and you didn't deliver, and that's really cynical. I'm sorry, but that's where I'm at. Thank you.
I think that's right. So that's why it's really important to focus on a few key topics that you would decide as what are your key topics in your unit, and talking, but you would talk to. So you would talk to some of the key agencies who are working on the ground, and then we would ask the questions in such a way that you don't get the unachievable. There will always be a few unachievable, but that's, but the majority, the ones that we've, done a lot over time, but in the last phase 1, we managed to hone that down and get very specific, go with 2 or 3 or 4 key topics, and then ask questions within that then helps you move forwards. And maybe some further delving to do after you do the initial consultation, but that is how not to make it too unachievable.
Right, thank you. In light of those comments, I have to say, I thought it's a very good idea. It's quite keep engagement. I think him plus some more long-standing councillors. I think it is a film of wise. So the question is, do we as a council would be to defer this until Donna has had a chance to talk more, and then we bring this back to council next month? So the proposal is to bring for Donna to talk more to Catherine and for us to reconsider this next month. So all those who would like to agree with that statement, just raise their hand. I think it's unanimous, right? We will defer this till next month after you've had a chance to decide further. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming along. Right. The next item is the application to Somerset Association of Local Councils, SOC, and our recommendations to approve initiation of application to the Somerset Association of Local Councils for health and wellbeing small grant up to 2,500, and to agree for the mayor to sign the application with reference to the next bidding window in January 24 to March 24. Do I have any questions on this? Right, so I'm assuming we're going to approve this. Do I have a proposal to approve this? Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Strauss. So voting procedures, all those wishing to vote to approve this initiation of application, please raise your hands. Yeah, that's unanimous. Just in case anyone not wishing to approve. Yeah, okay. Right, item 11, Armed Forces Covenant. Okay, so covenant, I'm going to put that on the screen. Yeah. No, okay. Right, so to resolve that as a town council, we adopt the Armed Forces Covenant and support the Armed Forces community, recognise the value of serving personnel, both regular and reservists, veterans and military families contribute to our town and our country. Consider appointing an Armed Forces champion, and recommend that all staff and councillors complete the Armed Forces Covenant e-learning module and nominate Taunton Town Council for the Bronze Award Defence Employer Recognition Scheme. Do we have to nominate a champion there?
Yes. You do, and then Councillor Fernandez has emailed in to say that she would like to put her name forward.
Right. Okay, so first one is do we resolve to adopt the 5 recommendations below? So do I have a proposer? Councillor Garson. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fernandez. So voting procedure, all those wishing to resolve that the town council does do items 1 to 5 on this list, please raise your hands now. Just in case, anyone not wishing to vote for this. Okay, so that motion is carried. So the second part is we have had an application from Councillor Fernandez to be the Armed Forces champion. Is anybody else wanting to step forward for this position? In that case, I'm happy to propose Councillor Fernandez as the Armed Forces champion. You have the second. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Voting procedure. Can I have a show of hands for those wishing to? And anyone against? Good, unanimous. So thank you, Councillor Fernandez. Congratulations. Well done. So, right, item 12, digital signage project. Consider the cost and ongoing support needed to provide a digital display screen in the town centre for the sole purpose of promoting events, providing information, and displaying agendas to visitors. I think what we're resolving here is to delegate powers to the town clerk to proceed with this project with the allocated budget as set. Do we have an allocated budget?
So you set the budget, obviously, to ask the question.
Yes. So, do we have, I mean, it's quite a lengthy, detailed document for this one. So, do we have any questions on this?
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to propose we spur this one as well, because I'd like to see a comprehensive signage project in itself across the town, and I think a comprehensive one, doing non-digital and digital, to include how we commercialise some of this as well, would be a far better idea than just purchasing a one-off screen. But how we have a master plan, you know, I don't know the ins and outs, but there are lots of advertising boards in town, you know, by the market house and stuff. How they are, so they usually advertise events, but obviously they're standard print. Can we digitise them? Are they ours? Can we, they're not ours, or can we do something, have a master plan in itself to futurise our town centre in itself? So that's what I would like to see, more of a more comprehensive plan, just opposed to a one-off project.
Thank you. And Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I think we do need to defer it. I think we need more information. I did notice that, I think it's Somerton Town Council, isn't it? That was used in the example, I think, in the paperwork that came with it. I did notice that I sort of clicked onto their website and had a look at their minutes and agendas, and I noticed that they, on the 13th, they're reviewing their electronic notice boards. So it might be worth just getting in touch with the clerk and just finding out what process that involved. And like, you know, reviewing it, if they decided to go ahead with it, what pitfalls. I just think it like sort of an information exchange, which will help to, you know, to further the discussion.
Do I have any? Yes, Councillor Gosling.
I just want to say I'm very familiar with the town has uses this digital notice board, and they've had a lot of problems with it. It's not properly updated, it's been vandalised and blah blah blah. And I am very much against it. I think the town does need, like as Councillor Prestine said, a comprehensive signage system, and I think I would be supportive of that rather than a digital board that will cost a lot of money.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Ellis and then Councillor Smith-Bowman.
I want to town crime. Yes. Yes. I was thinking about that. Trish Paula was like coming up with a really good plan to kind of get us town crier. I know we're in a digital age, but
with all codes.
I was a town crier. If this is to sponsor it, no, I mean, I do agree with you, Sandy. I think that there's a bigger piece of work to be done and we don't want information, but I just want it on the record. I want a town crier.
Councillor Smith Roberts.
I think Giuseppe raised a really valid point. We currently haven't updated our slides around our parks as an example, around our ownership of them, but yet we're going to put in digital sign in the central town. So I do think that we probably need a priority order of what we're doing. We talked about last night about toilets and people not knowing where they were. So we need a wider view and then we can review where we then spend money. So
I have said, probably agree that I'd rather see a nice notice board in my local park first, and I'm sure other people want to see notice boards in their local parks. So the proposal is we defer this. So Giuseppe, are you happy to propose that? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, comment to Councillor Sol. So all those in favour of deferring this until next council meeting, please raise their hands. All those in favour of not? Okay, that's unanimously. Right, we should defer that to the October, and we have some more information as okay, right, so item 13, Devon's lighting. So there is a budget available this year to pay for another 6 months of lighting.
It's not another 6 months of lighting paid before. So Somerset Council will pay for the lighting outside of Devon's. They are no longer going to pay for it. So the question is, do the town council want to take on to pay for the lighting outside of Devon's for the next 6 months? In view of some of the antisocial behaviours, and obviously we're taking down the lighting, it's obviously going to put that area, it's going to make it quite dark. So if everyone wants to take on that responsibility going forward, those are the costs. And then also be a cost then after 6 months to take it down afterwards.
Does anyone have any questions? Look, it's on there. Councillor Smith Roberts, going to go to Councillor Fitch.
So I think I'm okay with covering this because of the wider picture. Otherwise, I think it makes a huge part of the North Street, isn't it? Dark, and there is concern around antisocial behaviour. However, I'm wondering why we have the responsibility to take it down when we didn't put them up. Because all we're being asked to do is pay for the electricity bill. So there's a point there that I'm just trying to get my head around. And I'm wondering whether our operations team can think about a bit wider. I remember growing up, and it can't be that long ago, and I'm not that old, but it could have been maybe 2 years ago, that there were Christmas trees along the top of Devon. So I'm just wondering whether we can maybe have a wider conversation if we're going to pay the electricity bill, so we clearly know who the owners are. Can we just not sort of stick on the Christmas trees or do something around that end? Otherwise, it's going to push it back to New Year's to Christmas. I know that might be an extra little bit of budget, but I'm just thinking out loud, if we're going to pay a bill, we've kind of got skin in the game.
Can I just confirm, not paying electricity, you're paying for the hire of the lights? Wow.
The question was, it was only whether the bills for the electricity or the hire of the lights. Because as I walked here in broad daylight, the light grew on, so the difference of electricity bill. So not having it switched on in daylight hours, but if it's for that hire alone, that fills that question out.
Councillor Jim.
I'm really sorry, the risk is sounding grumpy. I mean, the relationship already between this council and the Somerset Council is we have emergency backup when they've got no money, can you pay for it? And this, I'm sorry, this is just a complete waste of money, and it's their responsibility to make our streets safe if there's in need light. So they should be paying for that and addressing it themselves, not passing the buck and asking us to pay £3.5 grand or whatever it is to maintain those lights high and then pay for the removal. It's nonsensical, and I'm not going to vote for this at all. There needs to be a discussion about street safety, if that's the case, about lighting. I mean, most of us will be going up to town many years, and it's always been that case, and I've never really felt unsafe about going to town anyway. So to do it regarding certain issues that have taken place recently as the reason to do it, I don't think makes sense, because it's been like that for many years. And for me, I can't support this. It's nothing to do with us, and I don't think we should be paying for it. So I'm sorry, there is concern, but that's a no from me. Councillor Peter.
I agree to some extent. I think we should be helping to fund this. I think if the town council is not here to help make our town better and to make it look more aesthetically pleasing, then I guess a key part of our function is to help do that. I'm conscious that this next 6 months is going to be darker months. So it's not just at night time we're talking those lights will be on from 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You've got all of that cultural provision along that wall that you wouldn't be able to read unless there's lighting there. So it'd be a waste. And actually lots of people comment on that about presenting the history of Taunton. So I think there's a wider piece here actually about what these lights are providing. I have to say though, I think paying to hire them seems unfortunate. I'm not sure how much it is to buy them and just plugging them ourselves. To be honest, probably the same, not a lower amount of money. So I think longer term, we certainly might not do it. Longer term, we should probably look at what the cost to purchase lighting might be, rather than continue to hire if we want it as a long-term fixture. So I'd like us to look at that as well. I think if it's the lights go out, if we don't do this, then I think we should support this. But with the exception, I don't think we should pay to remove them.
Councillor Fernandez.
I must have walked down that town in the dark, but there are street lights there, aren't there?
Yeah.
Traffic light. There are street lights, so it is lit. So are we specifically talking about eliminating that feature, that thing and stuff? I mean, there must be other ways. I mean, the street lights there, maybe make the street light a bit brighter. I don't know, but a bit of a different bulb in it. But I can't agree to this.
Councillor Staple.
I'm a little bit concerned that we could set precedents here, and that's a little bit worried. I do think it needs to be lit up, because it could be dangerous and it is a safety issue. But surely that is Sussex Council's remit to this to make sure the town is safe. And if every time there's a problem, the town council can pick up the problem, and we can just end up having more and more of these situations arising. And we don't have that money within the town council. So I would be against it.
Councillor Ellis.
Yeah, I think there's two issues. One is the safety issue, and one is the, as Tom highlighted, the fact that you've got this incredible, really high quality timeline of the history of Taunton, which is still, I still see people stopping and looking at it and wondering the lighting through, absolutely right. But there is, people have said to me, there is an issue, that's especially for young people's safety at night, and I think if those lights go off, it's not good. It really isn't. We've got used to they're a feature, they're a nice feature, but I do think maybe we could go have to play a little bit of hardball with our dear friends.
Yes.
As the set council, because frankly, it's a bit taken the what. And I mean, I've got in my garden, I've got kids throwing up these massive goats, for outdoor alfresco eating. And I'm like, this, can't we just buy our own lights and do our own little arrangement, even if it's literally, fall up the step ladder or something, bring it up, something, because the cost is, ridiculous. But we can't have those lights go off. Not good for the town, not for the safety of young people and the kind of wider pride of our town.
Councillor Clark, and then Smith, and then that's just called time.
Just a quick question. Was it lit up when Devon was just there? And the pieces? Oh, it was. All right, okay. I couldn't remember what it was like.
I wanted to come back, I think this is probably the one time that I have to wear both hats in this room, and try and distinguish. I think that we all need to think about local government finance, and if I'm understanding correctly, they've like probably put in by some of St Weston and Taunton in order to encourage people to look and decorate that end of town. I can argue around safety whether or not they stay on, I actually think more I'm linking more to Tom's point about looking at the artwork along there and just kind of keeping that area of town that's nice until we make the development to do something with Debenhams. However, listening to comments around the room, I think we all need to appreciate that local government finance, unless it's a statutory responsibility, it is clearly going to struggle over in the coming months and years. At Somerset Council, there is a £42 million budget gap next year, so there will be things that no doubt that they look to pass on to the local communities. I'm not saying that they want to do that, but it's the reality of the situation when 70% of the budget is spent in adult and children's services. We can sit here as town councillors and go, I'm not happy about it. I'm not happy about it that it's going to have to pass through the town council. But at the end of the day, if it's something that we want to do, and we all stood here to get elected and say that we want to make Taunton better, we can either say that we don't want that to happen, or we take it on and go, actually, we're going to take the precept that you paid us, and this is a good use of the money. For me, I'm personally going to go with it and say, it shows the artwork along there, it shows the history of our fantastic town. That end of town needs to be developed, but this is where we are in the interim. It is quite a lot of money. I'm also amazed at how much money things cost nowadays, but it is what it is, and we can then look at negotiating better prices if we want to do it in future.
Okay, councillor tonight, and councillor.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I want to mention is the light's actually on a private building. Why has no one spoke to the developers? The building's worth a small fortune. They're actually laughing at us. Oh, you're lying out for us and you're paying. Why should we care? It is on there, the health and safety, they should be let out. Or they have to do something. Thank you.
Okay.
So we have tried to contact them, and we've had no responses to emails we sent through to them.
Sorry, Chair, I can just don't mean to be button. Then we should make sure the Gazette knows. We should make it clear that we're paying, that this money is the people's money we're using to pay for it. And that developers will get away with it. I think we should do something and shame them. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. So whilst I acknowledge the sentiment about trying to make our town look pretty, first and foremost, we have to justify taxpayers' money, how we spend it. We have to look after their money. If we're basing a decision based on facts, then how many incidents have taken place outside Debenhams that have been reported to the police in the past, say, 6 months? A year. Can anyone give those figures tonight? Because if you can't, you're making an assumption. What is fact is we're being asked to pick up a bill for £3.5 grand, which has nothing to do with us and is taxpayers' money. We cannot justify lighting up effectively key lights at where they are for £3.5 grand and then paying for removal and we would have nothing to say about it. Now, the lighting situation for that has been like that for years. And unless you can provide me with some hard evidence to say there have been 4 incidents, 5 incidents, whatever, we're basing it on an assumption. It's taxpayer money.
So I just need to say this.
I just want to reply to the last comment, because actually it helps people to feel safe. I often have to walk through town and it's dark and I'm very glad of those lights. I feel it makes me feel safe, makes many people feel safer in the town, and lots of people, particularly women walking on their own, feel unsafe in this town. They're often saying it, I'm saying it now. I feel unsafe where there's no lighting.
We have approaching at 3 hours, advice that I need to ask you that we should suspend standing orders, and I think we've probably got another 15 minutes to complete business. Are we happy to spend the 15 minutes to complete the business? Ed, are you opposing this? Yeah. Yes, seconder, councillor Tully, all those in favour? Okay, good. Right. So, the recommendation is to consider and agree to pay this sum of money, but the feeling I'm getting from the floor is that I'm not going to do it, so. We just Tom?
So I've just done the maths correctly, just to put some things into context. It's £3,500 across 6 months, which is about 180 days. 6 times 30, 20 quid a day. To keep the lights on when we're going into winter. I'm sorry, I don't think that's a bad use of taxpayers' money. Actually, I really don't, because otherwise people will look at that building at 4 o'clock and go, where are the lights on? You don't use the private lights on, actually. I think we'll be doing more damage to the image of the town by turning them off. I really don't. I'm actually quite passionate about it. I think we're being really short-sighted. We are at some point in time going to have to spend some money on doing things in this town, and I think this is one where we need to spend some money.
Yeah. 20 times a day. Right, well, let's take a vote on this. So, the recommendation is to consider and agree to pay £3,486 to continue with the lighting at Devon's for just the next 6 months. For 6 months. Do I have a proposal for this? Councillor Smith-Roberts, do I have a seconder? Councillor Garside. Right, so with that in mind, all those in favour to pay the cost, please raise your hand. All those against. Were there any abstentions? Right, okay, so item 14, I think this should be quite quick. Go through the de minimis limit, pardon my Latin, and so the recommendation is to resolve to agree a de minimis or limit of £500 for items that will last over a year, items under £500 worth deemed essential to council operations. So the minimus limit is where you don't.
So it just needs for our asset register, we're not having to add everything, including a pencil. So that's the limit set that we have things to do.
I'm going to move straight to voting on this one. So do I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Strauss. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tully. All those in favour of this recommendation, please raise their hands. Anyone against? Right, lastly, item 15, the mayor and member expenses policy. An amendment to the current policy. So to resolve a recent issue, the council has agreed to approve the amendments to the mayor and members expenses policy under section 3. In support of the proposed amendment, a sum of £1,000 is fine. That's an actual vote. Okay, it's fired. I thought it was a typo. But from the growth and improvements budget to a member expenses budget for the year 2023 to 2024. We also request that the council's independent remuneration panel consider undertaking a review into the parish basic allowance. So that'd be for next year. Yeah. So this was the aim of that. Would you like to explain a bit more about this?
Yeah, so this will allow members to claim some travel expenses for taxis and for parking. There was currently a budget provision for it, so we had to bring it to council for you to agree if we're going to take the budget provision for it and amend the policy to allow members to claim the expenses.
Councillor Smith-Robertson.
I just want to really support this, because I've been thinking in the past couple of days, I think I've now spent 6 hours in this chamber coming up or coming close. And the reason I say that is I think the general public, those that are watching, I don't think they realise probably what we're doing is voluntary at present, and that may change in the future if we put it in an allowance. So for people to be out of pocket when they're volunteering their time for the benefit of our town doesn't fit easily with me. So I think there's something around the Equality Act, there's something around encouraging more people to be councillors, and if you make it a financial detriment so that people can't take part, you therefore discourage people from becoming involved in democracy, and that to me is a worrying state of affairs. So I think this is the first step towards saying we value ourselves and the time and energy that we put forward to make this town better.
I think I agree with that sentiment that we do incur expenses in the role of our job. And I think it's reasonable, being claiming reasonable expenses. Councillor Bowden?
Thank you, yes, I agree and would like to propose it.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Spratt? Right, so moving to voting procedure. All those in favour of adopting this recommendation? Wait for it. In favour of this recommendation, please raise your hands. Anyone against this recommendation to pass unanimously? And that's all points A, B, and C. All points A is going to be approved, all points A, B, and C. And I take it C is going to be as an ongoing discussion with the leader we have one. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the public. Thank you for staying.